2022 already. Is it recording now? All right. All right.
Okay,
Once again,
great.
good evening, everyone. Welcome to Manhattan Community Board 3's full board meeting for January 2022. I am Paul Rangel. I am the chair. Just a quick couple of notes before we actually start. The chat should be used for any technical issues or any technical difficulties, not for any side conversations or anything of that sort. If you have any questions on a technical basis, please do so. Please ask in the chat. It's not meant for any side conversations, please. Also, the chat should be used for attendance only. So if you're a member of the public, please sign in with your name and affiliation here tonight. All right, so that being said, we're going to start with our public session. 2 minutes per person. I do understand there is somebody who's in need of a sign language interpreter. I may grant some more time on that, and we will go from there. The first person I have is Wendy Brower. Wendy, go right ahead. You have 2 minutes.
I'm Wendy Brower, a long-term resident and ecological designer. I'm talking about East River Park and transparency. It's such a vexing topic. I'll focus in on actions to take. Given that the loss of our air filtration system as acres of exposed fill are blowing in the wind, I'm really dismayed there isn't more uptake of interest around having access to the data about air quality by CB3 elected, the resident associations, etc. Having access to data that impacts your health is not controversial. That's why LES Breathe has put out real-time sensors. You can see them at eastriverparkaction.org/sensors. Now, having done some research into air quality, most of which is on that website, I believe this community should have access to free and low-cost, efficient and effective air cleaners, and be encouraged to learn more about the choices that we make that impact indoor air quality. CB3 should be insisting that the trees standing around the new passive yard be left standing so they can drink up the excess rainwater, some of the emissions, and provide a little shade. Every tree should be reviewed before cutting for the Esker project. There is still a notable lack of signage in and leading to the park. According to the environmental study that we foiled, there should be marked truck routes by the Montgomery Street entrance. That's the only entrance for trucks, and yet they are missing there too. Please treat the open 42% of East River Park as if it were part of the mitigation and like it was a haven for people and wildlife, which it is. Stewardship, I understand, is coming back from Lower East Side Ecology Center, thank goodness. Maintenance and access, including ADA access. Please maintain the entrances, which are currently being treated as dog poop zones. We really need
Ms. Brower, your 2 minutes are up.
We really need a town hall on Esker where questions be answered by project managers with their cameras on, not by intermediates who never seem to have the answers. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Brower. Okay, I'm going to go to our next speaker, Mr. Vincent Jenkins. I believe he needs the interpreter, correct?
Yeah, but I think he needs
He's ready. He's saying good evening, everyone. Thanks for coming to the Community Board 3 in the Lower East Side of Manhattan. I'm Vincent, last name Jenkins. I'm an active participant here in the board. And I'm here to support disability rights and development and the process of what's going on in this community. Also, in the past, I had board members that were family and children's services in Jaffa. So I was the community board president for that as well. And I was facilitator at that. So I'm here tonight to announce and present on CB3 that I feel, very disdained about and some sadness about the deaf and hard of hearing issues and resources that are not available there. One is a big problem that there's a COVID, of course, as we all know, COVID-19 is a big issue still happening there. And a lot of seniors that are living in that community from that community are being ignored. And we want to know how many people that are still in the street. There's a lot of homeless people, a lot of people that have no place to go, and it's not safe to have all these people standing around in these areas. It's just not safe. So we have a lot of homeless people living in this area, and they're blocking passages, and they have no apartments and nowhere to go. I understand that there's one place in the Bronx that can possibly service these people, and then there's one here in the community board that we live in. But that's been established maybe 20 years ago. And I know that there's also a foster group home in the area that has shut down. And it was shut down because of lack of money and facilitating that was wrong. And there's been a long time standing issue there. So my issue is that there are no places for the young foster children to be. Another issue is that many of these deaf children, they have no ways of communicating with their parents that are with the places when they're placed with foster parents, because they don't have facilities of sign language. And we try to communicate these things with ACS. But we do need to try to set up a new group home for young deaf and hard of hearing children in the community board 3 that we live in. They really need the support there from the people. So he says, again, we need to really set up a foster home, a group home, and it shouldn't be just one building, it should be 2 or more buildings in the area. And they need to be focused more on deaf and hard of hearing children because there's such a lack. And this will affect them as they grow to be adults because they have no place to sleep. They're not safe because of COVID. And there's a long list. There's a long list of people in the group homes who are part of congregation programs that can be supported and also can be provided, to be adoptions. But we do need money for that, and that needs to be developed. And we need to keep them separate from adult group homes. We do have adult homes that are for deaf and hard of hearing, but we're mostly focusing on taking care of younger deaf and hard of hearing children that have no place to go.
I'm sorry, I'm going to interject. His 2 minutes are indeed up. I just wanted to give him enough time. Thank you, Vincent.
And he said, thank you so much.
Right. Have a good night. All right. Our next speaker is Joan OBrien. Am I saying that correctly?
Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
You to say it correctly, I would give up my 2 minutes trying to get it right. So this is great. I just want to say, guys, I know there's no one there that enjoys seeing trees cut down. Nobody from Village East Towers or East River Action, nobody thinks you guys liked seeing trees go down. But with those trees going down, so went down our main source of oxygen. And they left us only with the car exhaust from the FDR. They're still running 55 million cars a year. That's a lot. And now they chopped down the air filter system. Us guys in New York that fail, where are my guys that graduated high school from New York? Failed the biology regions. Finally, you learn what is photosynthesis. Photosynthesis is how come we have oxygen in New York or on planet Earth. So the trees are gone and they left us with the exhaust from the FDR, they gotta cover our end of the FDR. They gotta deck it out. Now we have no filter except for us and our own kids. This would be a good project for us to get together on. That our end of it, not to the whole George Washington Bridge, but our end of it should be decked out. And that would really give us the wall, and we would save the forest part of the park. And I think they could do that. They talk about it in other areas, and they could put up, otherwise we're breathing it. If you came home from my hospital, Bellevue, 3 years ago, you've breathed in 150 million cars. Let them deck it over. We should do that together.
Thank you, Joan. Appreciate your time. All right, next speaker is, sorry, Billy Cohen.
Okay. Hi. Yes, I want to talk about the park as well. That right now, the city did promise 42% of the park to be open safely and open accessibly. Right now, I want to talk also about mitigation, and mitigation that should be happening right now, mitigation for this summer with the 42% of the park, and mitigation for the future park, and looking at alternatives. Right now, the contractors seem to be very out of control and not monitoring anything, and they've already cut down such a huge amount of trees. They would have cut down more trees if these park defenders weren't in the park stopping them. But right now, we need Parks Department to be in the park, and we need to coordinate with DDC. And we need to protect the remaining trees. They need to keep everything safe and make sure that the protocols for safety are being followed. We need to make sure that coming up this summer that they're going to provide bathrooms. We need more seating, heat, and in addition to air that Wendy and Joan are talking about, the shade. Heat is the #1 weather-related killer in New York City, and without the trees and without shade, the park now and in the future will be barely usable. And we have a lot of mitigation ideas about the new park that to make the park even usable, like 13%, for example, is AstroTurf and heat and 20-foot wide concrete sidewalks. And this covering this whole park with fill is not necessary for flood protection. It's storm surge protection, and it's not necessary. Low walls, there's a lot of other ways to mitigate this. And I know it's late in the game to change the plan, but that's why we really need, right now, besides the lack of transparency through this entire process of switching this plan, there's not real transparency now. There's no real answers. We want to see real plans. We want a meeting, like a public forum with the city council, with community stakeholders, with DDC, with the landscape architects, with the engineers, so we really can ask questions in real time, really talk about true mitigation, and really what needs to be done now and in the future, and even just as far as this summer. Also, at the last meeting, the supervisor, Mark Vaccaro for Parks, said they were going to start construction on Hamilton Fish Park and Little Flowers Park, the 2 parks closest to the community. He was also saying how they're completely short-staffed, so there's no way they're going to start construction this spring. We need those parks right now. We need coordination to keep every park open, to give open streets, to give shade, to give seating. The people, there's also mental health issues when there's no green open space and shade and cooling. People get there's mental problems that lead to violence. All this is studies and science. We're not making this up. This isn't an emotional, this is science, and that's the real science. And you're killing the community with the bad air, lack of heat, and no green space. That no construction on the small parks should start until the upland Pier 42 is finished, where it's supposed to be green space and cooling and playgrounds and places to go. But who's coordinating that? Do we know? It's like DDC has it on their plans that it's going to be finished summer 23. What if it's not finished till summer 24? That's an EDC project, which are notoriously late. So we really need to sit down at the table with the real players, with the real stakeholders, and Parks Department should be in the park right now doing their job, keeping the park safe, mitigating and preparing for spring, and making sure that not one more tree is cut down until we're all on the page and there's comprehensive planning.
Okay, thank you, Billy, for your time. Appreciate it. You're over 2 minutes. Thank you. All right, our next speaker is Laura Sewell. Laura?
Okay, let me finish.
Hello, everyone. I'm Laura Sewell. I'm a founding member of the Lower Side Open Streets Community Coalition. And I just wanted to give you all an update on what's going on with the open street and tell you about an event we have coming up. So this was sort of promised and has started since July, but the open street is now full-time being managed by a cleanup corps crew, DOT contracted through the Hort. They do a lot of pedestrian plaza maintenance. So I just want everyone to know that the volunteers are no longer actually the ones moving the barricades on and off the street unless we find something amiss in our travels, and that that's being managed full time at this point by DOT. We'd still appreciate hearing if anybody has any issues, questions, or concerns about the Avenue B open street. And we're certainly happy to pass that along, but that's where we're at with that right now. And we have, DOT needs to do a survey on the existing open street and an outreach in the neighborhood on site. And we're going to do that on February 12th. If the office hasn't received an invitation about that yet from DOT, you will soon, Susan. We just settled this all on Thursday. So you'll hear from them and from us. They're going to come out on the street and do in-person surveys and interviews with people passing by and ask them. We all know that the street needs improvements. Temporary barricades aren't going to work forever. So everyone's aware of that, and they're working on some options for Avenue B, but they are going to do this survey. And since nobody wants to come out and do a survey in the dead of winter, we're having a winter festival. So we're going to have some cardio classes and an interactive tape art installation, weather permitting, and some other nice activities that day. So it's Saturday, February 12th from 1 p.m. to 5 p.m. And we're working on getting all the invitations out soon. We just wanted to give you a heads up. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Laura. All right, our next speaker tonight is Edward Chuchia. Am I saying that correctly? I'm sorry if I'm botching it up. My apologies.
How are you? Well, not really, but it's okay.
Sorry.
How are you all? My name is Edward. This is my wife, Amy. Let me introduce ourselves. We live on Mulberry and Canal. I have an office at Walker near Center Street, but my wife, Amy, is the owner of a dance studio at 120 East Broadway. And it's for that reason that we are here speaking to you all today. We are speaking out in opposition to the planned shelter over at 91 East Broadway, and our primary concern is safety. It's a dance studio, and the dance studio is for kids.
Yeah.
And they're
Mostly
Asian children. And right now we've got about 35 students, but there's going to be a lot more that will sign up once the pandemic finally lets more students sign up. And we are very concerned about the effects and the safety that's to be caused. We are well aware of the Asian hate that's out there and the concerns that young girls have about coming to this area. We are very, very concerned about safety. We are very, very concerned about the neighborhood. This is our home, it's our business, it's our livelihood. We've been here in Chinatown for over 30 years. And we're very, very, very concerned. And we do ask the board to address the concerns of safety primarily. And it's not just for older people, but it's for young people as well. How should a 10-year-old, 12-year-old, 15-year-old young Asian girl feel
safe to walk around there too?
Okay, and that's essentially our concern. And we really wish this board to consider that in anything that moves forward. We're just overwhelmed with the horror that's happened just in the last week or two, and I've seen in the last year or two about Asian hate. And I had the great good fortune to marry an Asian woman, and I recommend that to everyone here at this board to do the same. So I'll speak for the Asians in that regard. So thank you all, and have a very good night.
Thank you. Next speaker is Jan Lee. Is Jan Lee on? Jan Lee's not on. I don't
No.
see him.
I don't see him.
Okay. Give me. Mary Wang is the next speaker.
Hello, everyone. Hi, my name is Mary Wang, and I am a longtime resident of Chinatown. I'm here to speak about the planned shelter at 91 East Broadway. And as Edward said, I'm also very concerned about the safety. And so we just want the community I would asking that the community board not to make a decision on this issue until the residents in the community are informed and have a chance for public engagement. I understand that DHS has halted the project and agreed that it will not move forward until a February community engagement session. So passing this resolution now would send the wrong message to the community, especially the Chinatown neighborhood, that their voice does not count. So I would strongly ask that the board do not make a decision yet until after we have a chance for that public engagement. So East Broadway and Chinatown are already overburdened with like expanding jail system. There are 3 rehab centers on East Broadway, 5 homeless shelters, and I understand that there are like 3 more in the work. Our neighborhood is really saturated with shelters and have more than our fair share of rehab centers. It was said earlier, as an Asian American woman, I've lived and traveled in constant stress and fear that at any moment I may be harassed and attacked. Since the ongoing pandemic, the increasing hate news against Asian that I read about in the news are happening very close to home. A friend's elderly father was punched in the face on the street in Chinatown and had to be hospitalized. Just recently, my Asian, friend from church, she was shoved in the back in the direction of the train track by a man who was rummaging through garbage can. And this happened just a few days after Michelle Go's murder. So I'm very concerned about the safety of the residents in the community, especially the more vulnerable population, our children and our seniors. This community has one of the highest concentration of seniors in the city. And I fear for their well-being and safety. And this is including my own parents who live in Chinatown. They do all their shopping, doctors, all their services, most of their services are on East Broadway. So again, I will only ask that the board hold off on making the decision on this resolution until after the community has been informed and has a chance to be consulted. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Mary. Thank you, Mary. Our next speaker is Nolan Chang.
Hello, everyone. Thank you. I second what Mary just said. Born and raised in Chinatown, I have been watching the Chinatown decline with immense amount of homelessness and mentally ill people walking around. Chinatown, as you know, is heavily populated with senior citizens, and there's a lot of preschools and children around. And the homelessness and the mentally ill has really caused chaos in Chinatown. Most of the people that I know are afraid to go out. And therefore, I also request the community board to table the resolution of putting up a homeless shelter at 91 East Broadway. I also manage and own a property right across the street. And for the past 2 years, I had 3 deaths in our building from mentally ill people who were shooting up, doing drugs in our building, and has caused chaos. I had to hire additional security guard from one security guard to currently 3 security guards, because even my security guards were afraid to confront the situation that we have in Chinatown. So therefore, I ask the community board to table this resolution so that we have more transparency with the community. And that's it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Chang. Final speaker tonight is Ryan Johnson.
Hey, how's it going, everyone? So I've been a resident in the East Village for over 4 years now. What started out as a harmless flea market at a local church on 14th Street in between First Avenue and Avenue A has evolved into a drug and violence-filled hangout taking place in our local community. Originally supposed to be a weekend event, has taken place at all times of the day, all night, every single day of the week. And the sidewalks littered with unsold trash. Various homeless groups continue to develop shelters in front of local businesses and on the subway entrance. There's been an increase in crime and violence in the East Village area. We currently have a rating of F, and the total crime rate is 41% higher than the national average and 82% higher in violence. Fights breaking out. I've seen firsthand theft at Trader Joe's and Target, reselling, and then these folks reselling the items on Tarp. They're also selling perishable goods that someone can get really sick from, and the police force is not providing any safety and support our community needs. Allowing people to run rampant and create their own rules is ruining the sanctity of our community, the East Village. And I understand how difficult overcoming barriers to entry are for local restaurants. And these folks are, driving customers away from these local businesses on this street. I intentionally walk on the other side of the road, and I feel unsafe to even walk out at night. I know my girlfriend does as well. And it's gotten to the point where at this point, I don't even feel safe in this community. It's a difficult situation to fix as the problem runs deeper than a flea market, including homelessness, unemployment, and drug use. But all I could ask for is small changes to occur. I've previously seen an article that Councilwoman Rivera and other officials have promised change, but it's been over 2 years now. We're living with these issues now. What can we do as a community here to make things a little bit better? My calls to action are as followed. I'd like to add this topic to the monthly agenda for progress updates. Create a task group for further understanding the issue and developing solutions. Immediately reduce flea market hours to 1 day a week and on weekends and within certain hours. Enforce location to the confines of the church if they still indeed want to host it. Ensure no perishable goods are to be sold at these events. Increase police presence to reduce violence and eliminate drug use on 14th Street and other hotspots, including Tompkins Square Park. Remove any shelters in front of the local businesses and lingering peddlers. And create a community flea market licensing registrar, like the weekend farmers market, to ensure safe selling and regulation. In a time when rent is at an all-time high, I ask for basic living conditions. I want to be able to walk outside my apartment without running into used heroin needles and aggressive peddlers. We need to come together, and we need positive community influence. Thank you for your time. If there's any questions in the chat, I'd be happy to ask, and I'd be interested in.
It's a public session. No questions. Thank
Okay,
you.
and one more. I'd just like to also, if there's someone who's on the subcommittee, I'd like to speak to them at another
will
time
speak.
if
I will
there's
speak
someone
to
interested.
We
Okay.
we'll get it. Thank you, Mr.
All right.
Johnson.
Thanks, guys. I appreciate it.
Yep. Okay. I just wanted to make a quick comment that I go back to what I said earlier. Please no side conversations in the chat. These conversations are going on. There are no side conversations we had. I understand a lot of people want to support or against different issues. I understand that. No side conversations in the chat, please. Technical issues only and attendance. Thank you. Okay. That being said, Susan or Linda, is the district attorney on?
I believe so. Or wait, his people are on. I don't see him on.
He's not on yet. I will let you know. Thank you, Susan.
Okay, so I guess we'll.
Okay, so just to give the board a little update, our newly elected district attorney, Alvin Bragg, will be joining us and speaking to us in a few moments. When he comes on, I will pivot to him. But before that, I will go with the elected officials' reports. Let me see who is on. My apologies.
I think just start, none of the elected officials, so we could just start at the top.
That's actually not true. I'm gonna lead
all right.
him off. I'm gonna lead him off since he's on. Council Member Marte, you're more than welcome to give your report right now. Is he on?
Hi, everyone. I'm
Oh,
on.
is he on? Is
Is he
Chris
on?
on?
Is Chris on?
He's not on right now, unfortunately. He's at the CB1 meeting, which is happening the same night, but he will be on soon.
That's fine. That's fine. So
Okay, so I will come back to his report as I'll go in order. All right. I thought he was on because I saw his name. I'll come back to you. Thank you. All right. So that being said, is anybody from Mayor Adams' office on? Doesn't look like it. Okay. Off to a good start. All right. Public Advocate Williams. Anybody from his office on? Comptroller Lander. 0 for 3. It's not a good baseball game for me. All right. I understand Borough President was supposed to be on.
Eric is on.
I know Eric is on. Eric, you did
Oh.
mention to me that the Borough President was to come on.
Oh, he never
Hey,
mentioned.
everybody. Sorry, yes, Paul, I mentioned the Borough President should be on probably in about 10 minutes or so.
Okay. I'll wait for him as well, and then I'll just keep going down the line, and then I'll come back. Is that all right, Eric?
That works for me, thank you.
All right. Thank you. Congressmember Velasquez office.
Hi. Hi. Thank you for having me tonight. Here on behalf of Congresswoman Velasquez, I would like to remind everybody, and hope everybody here can help spread the word, that the application for federally funded New York State Homeowner Assistance Fund, there's the amount totaling $539 million is open. So any New York State homeowner who are at risk of defaulting a mortgage payment, at risk of foreclosure and a displacement as a result of financial hardship caused by the pandemic can apply to this fund that helps them to stay in their home. And they can apply at nyhomeownerfund.org. And this month, as we all know, the eviction, New York State eviction moratorium had ended on January 15th. But in the meanwhile, any renter who has fallen behind on their payment are encouraged to apply to ERAP if they have not yet applied, because as long as they have submitted an application to ERAP, they will be protected from eviction when the landlord takes them to court. And the application for ERAP is at otda.ny.gov. And another update is Congresswoman Velasquez sent her capital funding priority to the governor regarding the $1 trillion infrastructure plan. The priority for our district in Lower East Side, number one is support New York City Housing Authority repairs and upgrades for NYCHA. And second is to construct and rehabilitate accessible transit stations to meet American with Disability Act standards. And the third, the third priority for the Lower East Side is beginning projects to improve stormwater and a sewage infrastructure with an emphasis on reducing backups. And then another one is to emphasize the importance to make funding available for pedestrian-centered projects to increase transportation alternatives, and also a specific proposal is reduce congestion and pollution on local streets, specifically in local areas connecting major transit arteries. For example, the Delancey Grand Street area connecting to Williamsburg Bridge, there's always a major traffic jam over there. And in Chinatown, it would be the area would be the area around Kinlow Square, where 4 or 5 different streets join. And there's also a traffic, the traffic leading up to between Brooklyn Bridge and Manhattan Bridge. There's always a traffic hotspots over there. And another funding priorities is to advance Vision Zero and a safe route to school related projects, including the use of traffic calming technologies to ensure pedestrian safety. Lastly, to increase the availability of broadband access, including areas and populations identified by both New York State and New York City lacking broadband access. That's it. Any questions?
Thank you. So any questions for the Congresswoman's office? Hearing none, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. I see the council member has arrived. Mr. Marte, your report, please.
Hey, Paul, great to see you. Great to
Thank
see
you.
a lot of familiar faces. Before I start, I just want to introduce my CB3 reps, Jennifer Chow and Ariel Velez, both Lower East Side born and raised. So they love this district, they love this community board. And so if you have any questions, they will be our point person for any issue. And so right now we're temporarily at the former council member's office. We'll be moving hopefully next month to our permanent office on Hester Street between Eldridge and Forsyth. So within Community Board 3, and it'll be a storefront. So feel free to come by. We'll have a storefront opening as well. So we'll let everyone know that they can attend. Just going over a few things that we've done in the first 3 weeks. We kicked off participatory budgeting late last year. We got over 100 submissions, which is amazing. And I really have to thank my team for going out there and canvassing and door knocking and getting people to apply. Yesterday, I was elected by my colleagues in Manhattan to co-chair the Manhattan delegation. I think this is the first time in a really long time that both of the co-chairs, myself and Eric Botcher, are from Lower Manhattan, which I think is going to bring a lot of resources and attention to the needs of our district. The committees I'll be sitting on are the Committee of Aging and the new subcommittee of Senior Centers and Food Insecurity, Landmarks, Waterfront Resiliency, Parks, and Civil Rights. I'm happy to be sitting on all these committees because I know they mean a lot to our district. And I think it's really important to have that voice especially during these hearings. Some of the things we've been working on, as many of you know, Knickerbocker is currently having a potential sale. We've been working with the Knickerbocker Tenant Association to make sure that this process happens transparent and we make sure that affordability at that complex remains affordable forever. And so we've been working closely with them and other residents to make sure that their voices are heard and they get the best deal possible if it happens. In addition, we met with OER. I know they presented to the community board, but we also met with them independently to make sure that that process has great transparency and the remediation that they do there follows not only all the proper procedures, but if we can get an independent monitor, we get it. And that's one thing we'll be calling for fairly soon. We worked with NYCHA residents and TA. As some of you know, they went 4 or 5 days with no heat and no hot water, especially in LaGuardia and Rutgers. We were on the phone that whole week with NYCHA to make sure we get the repairs immediately done. I'd like to thank Nydia Velasquez, who hosted a meeting with other elected officials and NYCHA to press on this issue because it happens almost every single year. And how do we figure out ways that, this weekend when there's snow and potentially freezing weather, it doesn't happen again. And so I look forward to working with my colleagues and the Congress member to try to solve that issue. In addition, I wrote a letter to EDC regarding the ESCAR project to make sure that we have more air monitors. Currently, there's 6. There's 2 on site. There's 4 that has been ordered and on their way to be delivered. But I think we should have a lot more. 6 is probably used for smaller lot remediation projects. And there's a whole park while we have other people who are currently using the park at the same time. So I believe we need not only more air monitors, but daily reporting that's public for the community to access easily and to see. As some of you know, discretionary funding applications are open till February 22nd. And so if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to us. We can schedule a meeting. And this Saturday at 11 a.m., there will be a rally hosted by Neighbors United Below Canal against the dismantling of the Manhattan complex, detention complex, also known as the Tombs on Center Street. If you can join, please come with us. And we are partnering with Grand Street Dems on February 9th for a virtual town hall on composting. And so if you're interested, please join that. You can email our office at district1@councilnyc.gov, or you can private message Jennifer or Ariel, and we'll put you on the RSVP link and send you the link as well. But thank you again. I'm happy to be here. And if you have any questions or want to meet with our office, feel free to reach out to us.
All right. Thank you, Councilmember Marte. I'll take only a few questions, as I know the district attorney has come on and he was also going to speak. There were two hands raised, Trevor and then Valentina. Go ahead, Trevor.
Hi, Christopher. Congratulations. I'll be quick. I see Mr. Bragg on, so I don't want to take up too much time. One thing I didn't hear in your first days was the linchpin of your campaign is that's the rezoning, the Chinatown working plan rezoning. From a community standpoint, that obviously requires some resources and a heavy lift. I'm just wondering how long you think it will take for that process to be completed, considering that Soho and NoHo took almost 2 years to complete, and that was pushed by the city, the former council person and borough president. So it's a simple question of how long you think it will take for the entire plan to be passed.
That only took 2 years, both of those projects, because they froze the ULURP clock during the pandemic for probably 6 to 8 months, I believe. And so if it wasn't for those, for that delay and for the pandemic, I think it would have happened much, much sooner. We've seen other rezonings go much quicker than that. We actually been in talks with city council land use to follow an application with city planning. So we will give you more details once we do that.
Do you know how long it will take, just from a community board standpoint? Because if we're going to get involved for rezoning the entire Lower East Side, what's your timetable from your land use experts?
I will follow up once we have more information on that.
Thank you, Trevor. Valentina, go right ahead.
Yeah, probably this question can be answered by your office. Today, I went to my nephew's house who live in the Ruckus houses, and I saw these big signs downstairs about air monitoring or something. And I just was like, I didn't know what it was. So, I guess my thought is possibly to call your office tomorrow or contact Jennifer or Ariel. I think Ava Les put their info in the chat. So, I would be very willing to just contact your office tomorrow to find out what's going on in Ruckus. There's big signs about air monitoring. And this was in 54 Ruckus today.
Yeah, reach out to us and we'll try to gather as much information before you call.
Okay, good. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Valentina. And once again, congratulations to the new council member. And I'm sure we're going to see you on more often.
Yeah, thank you, Paul. I'm looking forward to working together.
Thank you. All right. I'm just going to go backwards a little bit and welcome our new district attorney, Alvin Bragg. The floor is yours, sir.
Thanks so much. So happy to be with you. Literally, we're neighbors here. I'm still at 1 Hogan Place. So really happy to join you and speak. I'll first start by introducing myself to folks who I don't know. So I'm Alvin Bragg. I'm the district attorney, and I'm a career prosecutor. I worked as a line prosecutor earlier in my career for the New York State Attorney General's office. Then I was a federal prosecutor, and then I returned to the Attorney General's office as the #2 lawyer overseeing the entire office, working on kind of the full spectrum of cases from, assaults to armed robbery to gun cases to public corruption, financial fraud, cases against landlords who harass their tenants, cases against employers who cheated workers out of wages. So bringing all of that experience to the DA's office and really seeking to pursue all of that work, which is so important. These days we have a number of priorities. I'll start with guns, which is a top priority. We've given the uptick throughout the island. We've been prioritizing this. We've actually brought more gun possession cases, sadly, to date this year than were brought all of the first quarter of last year. So that's a primary focus of ours. In addition, looking at trying to develop from those cases where we are recovering guns that are being possessed into cases of trafficking, leveraging technology from our federal partners who have the technology to trace firearms and also the technology to trace shell casings, so we can match firearms to active shootings. And so that's a significant priority early in the administration, and we'll keep pressing on that. In addition, to just raise up a couple of others, domestic violence has increased during the pandemic, and we are focusing there. The head of our trial division, which is the biggest division of the DA's office, which oversees all the street crimes, is headed by Joyce Smith, who was just the acting district attorney in Nassau and is a career prosecutor who's had 3 stints as a domestic violence prosecutor and ran the Bronx Family Justice Center, focusing on domestic violence there. So that's going to be a particular emphasis as well. And then finally, although there's many others, but I'll just stop with hate crimes. We are focusing a lot. We've seen the uptick again during the pandemic, particularly focus on the AAPI community. We were out, not in your community board, but I think really one that was following on 125th Street, following up on a case where someone was assaulted, was in a coma, and then recently passed away, rallying with people there. And we're actively engaged in that case, as we are also with the Michelle Go case, the Times Square pushing. So we're thinking about these issues every day. We've got phenomenal leadership in our hate crimes unit, but it's small. And so we are looking to increase capacity and shift resources there, and also looking to build cases that may not have been built before. We've been looking at cases really throughout the city and the country. A lot of times the prevailing wisdom in these cases is there needs to be some sort of explicit epithet set at the scene, and not really looking at the full circumstances. And so we're looking at these cases really from a kind of 360 view, going to be looking at social media, really kind of pry into everything behind the scenes, so that we can be very vigorous and bring these cases and get a deterrent effect to really try to bring these numbers down. So those are some of the things we've been focusing on early in the year, and happy to have questions and see what's on your minds and respond to them.
Thank you. Thank you, DA Bragg, for coming on tonight. I'll take a few questions from our board members. First 2 hands I see are Carlin and then Lee. Carlin, go right ahead.
Yes, good evening, Attorney Bragg. The gentleman you referred to as Yao Pan Ma. Okay, I show due respect.
Yeah.
Okay, I do have a question about shoplifting. I know it's kind of like a nuisance crime, but recently I've been into 2 chain drugstores, the Rite Aid on Grand Street by Clinton, and they have to lock up their cough drops at $2.69 a bag of cough drops. They had to put it behind a locked display case. I was just at the 7 Madison Street Rite Aid, and they have what do you call security tags on laundry detergent that's selling for $6.50. I think it may be a nuisance crime, but eventually the retailers will pass this on to the public. The cost, the added cost of replacing these products. Is there any plans to address the shoplifting free for all?
Yes, and I apologize. I didn't mention Mr. Ma's name, and I know it's gotten less attention than others, but should have mentioned him by name. We are forming. We've been in conversation with a number of kind of small business owners in the retail space, including the kind of stores you're talking about, and forming a kind of small business council to explore. I mean, what is happening now is intolerable. We can't have it continue. But what's happening is that people are, it's been happening for some time during the pandemic, being arrested, sent to Rikers for a very short amount of time because they're taking, goods that are maybe $100 or so, and then coming right back and doing it again. So we're exploring things like, no trespass orders and other mechanisms that we can use with the local shopkeepers, and we can get you more information about how you can join that effort. We have a sort of overarching one for all of Manhattan, and then we also have a more targeted neighborhood specific one right here in your community board.
All right, thank you. So I'm going through the hands. Leeberman, go ahead.
Hi, thank you. Hi, DA Bragg. The pushback regarding your day one memo was especially highlighted in a New York Post article a couple of weeks ago that specifically highlighted a robbery, a knife point robbery that occurred here in CB3 on Delancey Street just a couple of weeks ago. And a very large concern for this community is what you may have been pushing back on now, your prosecution of gun crimes and criminal possession of a weapon crime. We hear now that you are promising to go ahead and pursue those, to not just bring them, but the question is, are you also going to be asking for jail time when somebody is arrested and accused and convicted of crimes using a gun or a knife, whether it's during a robbery or others?
Yeah, so the answer is yes. And look, I own some of the confusion created by kind of putting a legal memo that was really meant for the office into the public domain. But I mean, look, I've prosecuted armed gun robbery and sent people to jail for significant periods of time. Prosecuted assaults, sent people to jail for particularly long periods of time. So I'm not someone who hasn't done this before. And yeah, if you're walking around the city with a gun, if you go in and use it to commit a robbery, that is significant. That's a felony, and that warrants jail time.
Thank you.
Alistair, go ahead.
Thank you, DA Bragg, for making it to this meeting. I've lived in the city for 22 years now. I'd say this is the least safe I've felt in the city in my life. Going on to just echoing what Mr. Chan mentioned about the petty crimes and the thefts, my understanding is now that even kids in private schools are shoplifting because they understand that there are no consequences at all. This is disastrous to the businesses. I've been in a CVS where I've seen a person come in with a garbage bag and fill it up and walk out. And I don't think that echoes well for the employees there that are working hard and seeing people just take off with goods, and the businesses that have struggled through the pandemic are really suffering. So I'm just hoping that something can be done on the smaller crimes as such to help the businesses, and also to make our city feel safer in a number of different ways. Thank you.
No, and I appreciate the concern and in focusing on it. Like I said, one of the issues is that someone steals $30 worth, they'll go to Rikers for a few days and come back. That's sort of just the nature of the penalties there. So trying to get to the separate out the folks who are really the repeat folks who are being opportunistic and finding accountability there is something we're working with. And like I said, no trespass orders, and really trying to use kind of the full spectrum and be creative because, this has been happening for the past, I'd say 18 months and the status quo isn't working. And so we got to be creative and that's what we're doing, and trying to do it in partnership with the store owners so we can be collaborative and meet their needs. So that's what we've been starting to do.
Thank you. Thank you. Olympia, go ahead.
So thank you. And I, for one, am very happy for the statements that you made. I feel that in this country, we have such a huge problem of incarcerating certain kind of people and perpetuating systemic, problems. So looking at 360 in people's stories and why certain things happen and not always penalize them, I applaud this. And, I'm happy that you're here to hear from us. I wanted to ask something that I'm not sure it's in your purview, but I wanted to raise it to your attention. there is so many tragic things happening in this city right now. So people don't realize that today we also had 2 pedestrian deaths this week. And not always, I was shocked to realize that, a driver can kill a person and not have any consequences. And, I'm wondering whether your office has any purview on that and whether you're thinking of doing anything about that.
It is within our purview, and I'm familiar with the collisions you're talking about, and we do investigate. So those are sort of open matters. I can't comment on those, but certainly there's a vehicular manslaughter charge. There are things in our criminal law that apply. When something is within the 4 corners. Obviously, there are collisions that occur that are not criminal, but there are some that are, and it's our job to investigate along with the NYPD to determine, whether there should be a charge or not.
Thank you. Just a reminder, please no side conversations in the chat. I hate to have to always remind people about that. But please no side conversations in the chat. Thank you. Michael Perlis, you're up next.
Yeah, I don't have a question, DA Bragg. I just wanted to thank you for your courage. And I know there's been a lot of pushback, and even on this call, there's some people, I think fear-mongering and not looking at data. And I just wanted to thank you for your policies and for your leadership, and for not faltering in your values and morals. So thanks.
I appreciate it. I will say, in response to your comments, that I do think there's been a lot of kind of misinformation. So I think it's important for me to clarify. And so I'm always happy to have a discussion about, that which I believe, but, some of the questions which are about, gunpoint robberies and things like that are not my views. And so I appreciate the opportunity to clarify and take accountability for the fact, as I said, kind of this legal memo that hit the public domain, and appreciative of the questions, just to clarify, but also thank you for your thoughts as well. I appreciate it.
Thank you. David Adams, go ahead next.
Congratulations, DA Bragg, on your election. Seems you can hear me, right?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Okay. The concern that I have most about the policies is the most dangerous point of interaction between a police officer and whoever suspect, or whatever you want to call him, is at the point he's trying to make an arrest. Most of the tragic consequences you've had in the past year has been when there's been resistance to that arrest. I would like to know that whatever, it could be justified or brought out later when they go to a judge or whatever, it could be straightened out. But if you create a possible conflict at the point of arrest, you could have consequences that may not be able to be straightened out. And I think everything should be done to encourage whatever is happening, because at that point they can still be straightened out, that they comply with the police officer, not create the conflict or the situation where we could have a tragic consequence.
Look, I agree with you. I've been a prosecutor my whole career, always mindful that, I sit behind a desk or I go into court, and I'm not going into harm's way like our officers. I think the portion that you're referring to is, I said that there's a particular species of resisting arrest, which, based upon my interactions growing up, can sometimes be pretextual, which is when the person is arrested for resisting arrest and no other charge. And I've always said, well, then what was it they were resisting? And so we carved out a very narrow set of circumstances, based on that. But that does not, interfere with my long-held principle, where if you attempt to hurt an officer, that's an attempted assault. If you push, shove, or thinking about hurting, and I've done those cases. I've prosecuted people who have, harmed or attempted to harm law enforcement, and will continue to do so.
As I say, that's the one point in time where, even if the police officer is wrong and if he's arresting just for that, not to escalate at that point and, get it straightened out later in the courts or whatever.
Okay, thank you, David.
Yes, I'm not suggesting that anyone should resist. No, I completely agree with you on that.
Okay, the final two questions I will be taking for the DA is. All right. Kay, go ahead, Kay Webster.
Hi, DA Bragg. Congratulations. It's very good to hear you talk. I think that the situation that we're all confronted with is complex, and I am really appreciative of your view of the complexity that awaits all of us. I'm also the president of Park Coalition, Sarah Roosevelt Park, that has seen murder, recent murder especially, but a lot of assault and drug dealing, et cetera, et cetera. And I guess I think that we're in sore need of mental health resources. We're in sore need of housing for people who need it. Racism and poverty drives people into a lot of criminal activity. I have to admit, when I was 10, I did used to steal, so I hope the statute of limitations has left. Yes, that's right, Paul. I saw your face. But anyway, do you intend to use the restorative justice model for some of your, how you think about certain kinds of crime in your office?
Yeah, yes. I mean, I think one of the things that we don't talk about enough in our system is that folks who are, harmed and are survivors or victims of conduct aren't really given full spectrum of choices.
Right.
And so everything that we're going to do in the office is going to be driven by victims and survivors, and so in consultation with them. So when a victim or survivor wants that, we are in the process now of actually scaling up our resources so they'll be available to them, but obviously only when it's wanted by the victim or survivor. But I think it's a really important tool to focus our attention on the needs and wants of victims or survivors. So
thank you. Excellent.
Thank you, Kay. And no, I wasn't judging you for stealing at 10 years old.
Oh, yes.
Andrea Gordillo.
Thank you, Paul, and thank you, DA Bragg, for making the time tonight and coming out here. Apologies, I'm off camera. I'm recovering from my booster shot, but I wanted to echo my colleagues' statements from Olympia and Mike. And I wanted to ask you more broadly about how you hope to, or how you plan to achieve your reform goals without sacrificing public safety. Thank you.
So, I mean, it's interesting. I've been saying, we're going to achieve safety and fairness, and I've been thinking recently about maybe saying we're going to achieve safety and safety, because the fairness initiatives are driven by public safety research. Excuse me. So, we think about, we've all read it, and I think we've actually probably been asked about it tonight. The person who's does some horrific act on their 8th or 9th interaction with the criminal justice system. And I think we read that article and we rightfully wonder what in the world happened the first 8 times. And what's happened the first 8 times is that person's gone to Rikers Island, sat there for about 30 days to maybe 90 days, and then come right back to the same community without the underlying issues addressed. So we're going to be scaling up, substance use disorder and other services to try to get to those root causes. That's fair, certainly, but it's also safety. It's driven by research that shows that approach will make us safer. And so I'm thinking about starting to say, rather than just safety and fairness, safety and safety.
Thank you. I'm actually going to ask the last question. DA Bragg, I just wanted to know, a few years ago, your predecessor had instituted the youth opportunity hubs throughout the borough of Manhattan. I know that contract is run out, or the money is run out. Is that something that your office would be willing to take on again at some point, or something similar? I know it helped a lot of the nonprofits and working with a lot of different organizations and helping young people throughout the city, well, throughout Manhattan, excuse me.
We view Manhattan as the whole city. So let me take a look at that. I mean, one thing that is challenging is that the way that the funding for some really great initiatives was that it was through our kind of forfeiture money from white collar cases. And that was a very, very, very big pool of money at one point. And now it is not, relatively speaking. And so some great programs that are still kind of under contract will continue, but we've got to go to sort of our partners in other parts of government, and I see some in city and state to sort of make the case for putting some of this into the traditional, budget appropriation. So I see Estelle nodding, which means she's familiar with this program. So I'll get more briefing on it, and if indeed the funding is lapsing, we'll see what we can do to try to continue good work.
Thank you, DA Bragg. I just also want to acknowledge I'm not sure if you can see everybody, but your Chanterelle Sung from your team is also on the call tonight. So I don't know if you wanted to say something real quick, Chanterelle.
Sure. Hi, everyone. I'm Chanterelle Sung, Chief of Strategic Operations with the District Attorney's Office. I actually was a former prosecutor in the Manhattan DA's office for about 7 years, from 2004 to 2011. And I am very familiar with the particular community that you all live in and serve in. My family has roots in Chinatown and Lower East Side. So it's great to be here to hear all the concerns and to see you all. I think that we have a very big task ahead of us and responsibility, but looking forward to working with you all in a strategic way, given that there's so many challenges and so much work to be done and limited resources. It's really important to figure out exactly how we can have a greater impact more efficiently and effectively.
Thank you. And just thank you to the entire District Attorney's Office for coming on tonight and presenting to us in your first few weeks of your tenure.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you for coming on tonight. All right, so we're going to move forward with our elected official reports, and I understand the Borough President has joined us, our newly elected Borough President, Mark Levine. Mr. Levine.
Hello, Mr. Chair. Thank you so much. And hello, Community Board 3. I know so many of you. I've worked closely with you on a variety of issues during my time in the council as chair of the health committee and more. But how great is it that I can now speak to you as your new borough president, just 3.5 weeks into the job. I'm so excited to work with you. On the call with us is one of our stalwart team members who's going to be serving for now, at least, as your community liaison. It's Eric Cuello, who's been with my office for years in the council. He's our deputy director of our community affairs team, but he'll be your guy here in CB3 for now. And Eric, if you haven't already done it, maybe you could just drop your contact info into the chat. What a 3.5 weeks it's been for Manhattan, for New York City, since my term began and since all of our new year began with the horrible surge in Omicron, which thankfully seems to be abating now, with a horrible string of murders, including culminating in the horrible double shooting of the police officers. We're now mourning the loss of the second officer, Officer Wilbert Mora, today. And of course, the horrible murder of Michelle Alyssa Go on a week and a half ago. It's we've been on a permanent crisis footing here. And then there are other challenges like the expiration of the eviction moratorium here in New York City. And I'm really working to respond to each one of these crises directly. On the COVID front, I've been active and continue to be in pushing for good policy so that we can manage this pandemic to the point where it's no longer disrupting our life, no longer overwhelming our hospitals as it currently is. And we were able to secure about 10,000 rapid tests, a number of which we gave out here in the community, including through CCBA in Chinatown, and through your local council members as well, which I guess is council members Marte and Rivera, who cover I believe, both sides of the community board. On the issue of the eviction moratorium, we have been rallying in a big way to stand up for housing court and tenants who are now facing potentially an avalanche of evictions at unprecedented levels, including here in Community Board 3. And my proudest accomplishment in the City Council was passing right to counsel for tenants in housing court, first place in America to do that. And it guarantees that every tenant facing an eviction has the right to an attorney. But I am worried now that the sheer scale, the number of evictions will make it difficult for us to live up to that. And so I have called for all judges in housing court to commit to not move cases forward if the tenant does not have representation, as is their right. This, I think, would do an enormous amount to protect vulnerable tenants during this difficult time. As to the horrible killing of Ms. Go, we really have a problem with the number of people who wind up on the tracks. Thank God only a small number are pushed, though those cases are horrifying and we need to prevent them. But we have hundreds of people a year who wind up on the tracks because they fall, because they attempt suicide, because they are trespassing, because they drop a cell phone and try and retrieve it. And I really think it's time for New York City to follow other cities in Europe and Asia and install screening doors on subway platforms that would protect against these kinds of falls, deliberate or accidental. It's already being done in cities around the world, as I mentioned, including older subway systems like Paris. It's done in New York City at our AirTran at JFK Airport and has enormous safety benefits. So I joined with all 10 of the Manhattan City Council members, including Council members Rivera and Marte, in sending a letter this week to the MTA to push them to start by installing this in one or more pilot stations and do planning to take it more broadly. I want to acknowledge how pained I've been by this horrible wave of attacks against Asian American New Yorkers in Chinatown, across Manhattan and citywide. I was able to attend a vigil with leaders in Chinatown last week denouncing this horrible wave, not only because of the murder of Ms. Go, but also we had a horrible death in East Harlem of a Chinese American New Yorker, Yao Pan Ma, who had been attacked last April, but just succumbed to his wounds. This is happening again and again and again, and we have to do more to protect people of all backgrounds, but especially the Asian American community, and stand up to this hate. We have to do more to attack the crisis of mental health. Maybe we have time to talk about that. And finally, I'll just close by mentioning an issue close to home in CB3. Throughout Manhattan, I am standing up for equity and distribution of all the benefits and burdens of infrastructure here. Whether it is homeless shelters or substance abuse treatment facilities or positive things like parks and bus lanes. I want fairness. I want fair share. And we don't have that. There's no doubt that Chinatown in particular, among other neighborhoods in Manhattan, has a concentration of facilities beyond other parts of the city, and it's not fair. So I wanted to acknowledge that this is very much on my radar in CB3 and other parts of the borough, and something I intend to work very hard on. So I'm going to pause there, Mr. Chair. If there's time and it's appropriate, I'm happy to take questions, but if you're tight in your agenda, I understand. I certainly will be back again and again. You can count on it.
Out of respect for your first meeting with us, Mr. Borough President, I'll take a few questions for you.
Okay, great.
I see there's 2 hands up. Michael Marino, go ahead.
Hey, Mark, nice seeing you.
Hey, Michael, great to see you too, my friend.
I know that it is community board application season, so I'm just wondering if you can speak a little bit about your thought process about appointments and reappointments for community boards across Manhattan.
Well, thank you for mentioning that. Applications are now live, open until March 1st. And Eric, if it sounds like you're already way ahead of me. Oh, you put your email in. If you could also add in the link for applications, that would be great. I encourage all of you to reapply. We hope to have a rigorous process, interviews coming up in the weeks ahead. We want a diversity of perspectives from all walks of life, young people, small business owners, NYCHA residents, people with disabilities, trans New Yorkers. There are a number of groups which are underrepresented, but it's diversity of perspective that we value. But I value the kind of experience that so many of you have accumulated by being board members. I served for 5 years on Community Board 12. It probably took me a good 5 years to get up to speed. There's a lot of complicated material. And one of the reasons why I opposed term limits for community board members and campaigned against it, we didn't win, but was because I do understand that many of you, having served here for a long time, bring important perspectives. So don't worry, that will be absolutely valued in this process. And I just encourage all of you who are up this year to please reapply. Thanks so much, Michael. Thank you for all you do, by the way, for the community and your stewardship of the park. Incredibly grateful for your leadership.
Thanks, Mark. Take care.
Alistair, go ahead.
Yes, thanks, Mark. Question for you is, do you know what the approximate cost would be for installing the sliding doors in the subway stations across the city? And whatever that cost is, I imagine it would be quite large. That's not going to solve the mental health issues that the city is experiencing. Would the funds be better spent in providing programs and support for people that have mental health issues?
Alistair, I really appreciate the question. We need to move forward on both fronts. This is imperative. We have to do better to tackle the crisis of mental health that the city is experiencing, particularly of chronic conditions like schizophrenia, which are driving a lot of the public safety issues that we've been discussing. And that requires doing more to help people get into supportive housing, to a safe shelter, to even inpatient psychiatric services where necessary. Manhattan has lost almost 500 inpatient psychiatric beds over the last decade. We're really paying for that now. We have almost no what you would call medical respite beds, kind of a step down from an intensive inpatient psychiatric bed. We have to do all of that. Most of that, by the way, is expense money, not capital money. We can go into the budget. What we're talking about in the MTA, which is also state budget money mostly, is on the capital front. And estimates are that this could cost millions and maybe tens of millions per station, as much as 30 million per station. Before you get sticker shock, understand that the capital budget for the MTA is tens of billions at any given moment. And that the way you make change in the MTA is not by implementing something like this in hundreds of stations simultaneously. What we're calling for is to start and find those stations where the engineering challenges are more reasonable and the cost, therefore, is less, and begin to install this, to learn, to iterate, so the public can begin to see the benefits. And while, as I mentioned, these horrifying episodes where someone is pushed, we certainly want to prevent. Most of the people who wind up on the tracks, as I mentioned before, are either falling on their own, they are trespassing deliberately. It's very painful, but many of them attempt suicide. Also, by the way, I believe the #1 source of delays in the subway system is track fires. If it's not the #1, it's close to the top. And track fires are usually caused by trash. which again falls off the platform. So this also is a service issue. So we want to move on all of these fronts. Maybe I can come back to talk about the mental health challenges. That's worthy of a little more time. Or if you want to reach out, Alistair, if that's a particular interest of yours, let's connect. And as I mentioned, Eric put his contact in the chat, so please reach out.
Thank you. Thank you
All
very
right.
much.
Thank you,
So
Alistair.
final 3 questions for the Borough President. Valentina, go ahead.
I have 2 somewhat questions. One is they're both basically coming from a public health perspective. One is congestion pricing. The fact that below 60th Street, I'm with a group, and one of our issues is the fact that when you toll trucks that bring people's medication, the last thing anybody wants in an emergency room is a patient telling you, when you say to them, your blood pressure is really high. Well, I'm not taking my medication because it's too expensive. And I think we all know that if the trucks get told that's bringing medication, that's going to be something that the patients are going to have to pay for. And the other thing is open restaurants. 2 of the places that have very high incidence of COVID are the East and West Village. And one of the issues is these open restaurants. There's basically an indoor restaurant that's sitting outside so that people think that they're in a outdoor safer space when there is no ventilation for some of these places. There's no windows, there's no, there's just a door to come in and then you close it. So it's basically enclosed. It's basically an indoor restaurant that people think is an outdoor restaurant, but it does not have ventilation. So I guess my question is, what are your plans for those? Congratulations. I'm very happy because I know that you were the person that was head of a health committee on the council. So I just think that you are an excellent person to be doing this. But I think these are 2 issues for—
Yes, they are. And Valentina, first, let me thank you for your leadership on public health. It's really been inspirational. It's been great to work with you on that over the years. And I'm going to continue to be a warrior for public health. That's a promise. You raised 2 really important issues. Look, on congestion pricing, one of the ways we're going to meet the severe capital needs in the system, which really stretch into the tens of billions, is by generating a permanent recurring source of revenue. And that is one of the big rationales for congestion pricing. The second big rationale is to reduce what is now a suffocating level of congestion in Manhattan, which is impacting our economy and our health and our environment and safety and all of that. But by the way, I do think that low income people, Manhattanites who live in the zone, need to be exempted, which we can talk about. But as for deliveries, I've talked to some of the trucking companies who have told me that they actually think congestion pricing might save them money because they're losing millions and millions of dollars by their drivers and vehicles being stuck in traffic for hours on end. So, this might be a net savings for them. $25 for them to come in if they can save an hour of not being caught in traffic is a win. But we should be sensitive to what this does to out-of-pocket costs for prescriptions. I would think that health insurance contracts would preclude that being passed on because the deductibles are set. But let's you and I stay on top of that and look into it, and I'll do a little research on my side, and let's you and I connect on that. Look, on outdoor dining, I'm a huge fan of outdoor dining. I think it's one of the things that saved New York City in the worst days, and I hope it'll be a permanent feature of New York City. Having said that, now to make this program work long term, we do need to, I think, have more definition and more tweaking, and we can't have a one size fits all. You have to take into account the local conditions. For example, if you're on a very narrow street or have a very narrow sidewalk, obviously you have to have different standards than if you're on very broad boulevard where space isn't really a constraint. So there's a variety of other issues, disability access. You mentioned one, which is that from a pandemic perspective, air circulation perspective, an enclosed space that's on a sidewalk or a street, you're not getting any benefit in airflow there. So these are all factors that have to be accounted for. I'm guessing CB3 is active on this, and I can tell you are, Valentina. I would love your input as we shape, again, permanent policies and guidelines on outdoor dining. So to the extent CB3 is active on this, let's partner. I would love for my office to be in contact with all of you on that.
Thank you.
Thanks so much.
Okay, Susan, go ahead.
Sure, thank you. First of all, as far as open restaurants, it's the biggest generator of complaints in CB3, but the board has voted on several very long, very thorough resolutions that I'll be happy to forward to you. I just also want to mention that we have put a link to the board member application on our website. And the last thing is we've made a map of the shelters and safe havens in CB3, which I'd like to send to you tomorrow.
Oh, I would love that. Thank you.
Thank you. And that's it.
Thank you, Susan.
I'll follow up with after that.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, final two questions. Carlin, go ahead.
Yeah, hi, Mark. Going back to these subway barriers, I recall seeing somewhere where a private company had installed the subway plexiglass dividers, and in return, the city didn't pay anything, and in return, the private sector would put advertising space there to recoup their investment and also make a profit. You might want to look into that.
I will look into it. In the case of the JFK Air Train, it was part of the construction contract. The city did pay for it. If you're doing this at time of subway station construction, then it's much easier and cheaper. And it's really maddening that we just built 3 new stations on the 2nd Avenue line and didn't do this. Same goes for the Hudson Yards station. There were a lot of people pushing, myself included at the time, for that to be done. But I'll look into the idea you suggested, Carlin. And I want to thank you, Carlin, also for helping to organize the vigil and rally for Yalpan Ma that I mentioned. I'm not sure if you heard me when I spoke before, but it was a really powerful and moving gathering. So I want to thank you for how you've led on the issue of anti-Asian hate, Carlin.
Thank you.
And Robin's last question for the borough president.
Hi, Mark. Congratulations.
Hey, Robin. Mark is fine.
Mark, Mr. Levine, Borough President, MVP. I wanted to just, I'm in the arts and cultural sector and community. That's what I do for a living. And I know that, as you know, that the arts and cultural sector is one of the hardest hit sectors since COVID. And I'm just wondering what some of your ideas or take or ideas for helping that industry move forward. For example, the open culture permit that the city launched last year through legislation by the city council was not passed for this year. I would love to find a way for that to happen. So I'm just, like to hear.
Sorry, I missed the last point. What did the city council not do?
The open culture legislation that allowed artists to perform in city streets last year through the city council was a legislation that was passed and made into a permit process. Didn't pass the city council again this year. They were trying to make it a permanent program, I think, before Councilman Jimmy Van Bramer left. So some things like that would be. Yeah.
Well, Robin, I see arts as absolutely vital to the comeback of Manhattan, both from the perspective of our spirit and needing the inspiration that comes from live entertainment. Also, it's a massive economic driver, direct jobs in the arts sector, but it's got a huge multiplier effect because the arts attract tourists and visitors, And those folks then will stay for a meal or stay in a hotel or go shopping. There's no comeback from Manhattan if we don't bring the arts back. And that includes Broadway, of course, but also smaller arts venues, of which there are a number in Community Board 3 that are incredibly important. And personally, some of my most memorable experiences in live venues have been in off-Broadway, off-Broadway, independent theaters. And the city can do a lot to nurture this industry back to life through funding, through setting good guidelines on COVID, and by protecting good jobs. Many of these are union jobs, depending on which sector of the arts industry. You know, one of the controversies on the open culture legislation was it seemed some of my friends and the organized labor world felt it didn't have adequate protection for arts workers. And I think that may have been what slowed down the bill. Something I'm sure that you're committed to, as I am as well. I would love to work with you on that and make it a permanent feature, make it good for workers, make it good for the public, great use of a public space, activating an outdoor space like that. It's a win on many fronts. So I will be very committed to the comeback of the arts in Manhattan and would love to work with you on that, Robin.
I'll reach out to Eric. Thank you so much.
Please.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Borough President. Congratulations on your election. I look forward to working with you.
Thanks, Paul. Thanks, everyone. Have a great night. Bye-bye.
Good night. I understand that Mr. Senator Kavanaugh's still on.
Yeah.
I am indeed.
Go ahead.
Enjoyed hearing from our new borough president and all of your questions. Just so you know, we're at the beginning now of a new legislative session in Albany. The last few weeks, one of the big events of the opening of the session is the governor's executive budget being proposed. That was proposed last week and will be the subject of intense negotiations over the next couple of months, with the goal of passing a budget by March 31st. The governor's proposed executive budget includes total spending of $216 billion. That's about a 1.5% increase over the current year budget. And it includes many key priorities that are made possible by the fact that we did some significant increases in tax, some progressive tax increases last year. So we're actually going to this year with a pretty good fiscal situation. It's hard, it's there's a lot in there, but just a couple of highlights. The budget includes a school aid increase of $2.1 billion. That is a 7% increase over last year, and it's part of a 3-year process of phasing in some equity around that was made, the state was made aware of through a lawsuit called the Campaign for Fiscal Equity many years ago. And it basically, the state has shortchanged high need districts like New York for many years. So this is an effort to address that. And again, a significant increase from last year to this year, and there'll be one more next year until we get it fully funded. There is one of the big components of what we're seeing now is the new 5-year capital plan on housing. As the housing chair, I've been very focused on that. The governor had agreed late last year that she would propose the 5-year plan with the executive budget proposal so that we could negotiate it in a more transparent and thorough way than has been done in the past. It is a $4.5 billion capital proposal over the next 5 years. That is compares very favorably to the $2.5 billion proposal 5 years ago. It's going to be a big battle to make sure that it, make sure it's adequate, make sure it addresses some of our big needs. I will already say that we need bigger numbers for public housing, and we've had a lot of hope that we get a lot of money from the federal government through, Build Back Better or some other thing. But we do need to make sure that we're dealing with the desperate needs there. I'll talk a little bit more about some local aspects of that in a minute. But there's also very good news on the environmental front. The governor really is embracing that, and it includes $500 million for clean water infrastructure. It includes an increase in the Environmental Protection Fund by 33%, from $300 million to $400 million. That's some flexible money that funds a lot of specific grants that are really useful locally. And it proposes an increase on the Environmental Bond Act from $3 billion to $4 billion. That's something that would have to go before the voters, which I've been supportive of in the past and will continue to support. So again, some good, good real support from the governor on that front. Obviously, there's a lot more in there, but we'll have opportunities to discuss that in the future. And you have a long meeting tonight, so I'll cut that short. But on the housing front, we also began the year with a hearing along with the Judiciary Committee chaired by Brad Hoylman on good cause eviction. This is the notion that you can't be kicked out of your home by your landlord without a good cause. So the expiration of a lease or some other reason why the landlord wants to remove a tenant would not be sufficient were this passed. We had 41 people testify in person. Lots of people submitted additional testimony online. We heard from a very wide range of perspectives: landlords, tenants, advocates, policy experts, researchers. All of the testimony is available on the Senate website, as is the 8 or so hours of video of that hearing, which was actually genuinely interesting, but maybe you can, skip through to the good parts if you go view it, as it was long. We also, as many of you probably know, the eviction and foreclosure moratorium was allowed to lapse on January 15th. That's a bill I had written and passed several times in the state legislature. And I think you could have made a good case that the public health situation requires the continuation of those measures, but there was not a consensus to do that. In the meantime, the good news is that the emergency rental assistance program, which had been closed in the fall, I had been here saying that that was a very terrible decision when it was closed. It is now reopened, partly because of a successful lawsuit. And what that means is if people have difficulty paying the rent, if they're struggling financially during COVID, they can apply for that program. And upon application, if you have a pending application, you are protected from eviction. So that's a very significant set of protections. Again, that's a federally funded program, but we wrote the state law implementing it and included those protections, which again are the strongest eviction protections in the country that come out of any version of that program. On homeowners, there is a separate program called the Housing Assistance Fund. I did a kind of a public information session, a forum a couple of weeks ago with Liz Kruger to get word out about that. That is accepting applications. You can go to the state housing agency and apply if you are having difficulty, if homeowners are having difficulties paying their expenses. That is a good source. It's also become a bit of a tradition in the Senate to start the year on the very first day we are doing legislative business with election and voting reform. We did, the huge changes starting in 2019 that really have modernized our election system. This year, we focused on a package including strengthening various provisions around absentee ballots, which I think we've all become more aware of the value of those during COVID. We also passed a bill of mine as part of the package that one of the things that the voters were asked to approve in an election day and turned down was same-day registration. I think that's really disappointing. That's something I fought for many years. I think we should revisit that. I actually passed the first bill in the assembly on that topic. It's something we should revisit. But in the meantime, I have a bill that would move the deadline for registering vote up to the constitutional minimum. The Constitution says it has to be within 10 days of election day. So right now it's 25 days before an election where you're no longer able to register. So this bill, by making the registration date only 10 days before election, would effectively give you same-day registration on the first couple of days of early voting, because that starts 12 days before the election. So it is a very significant reform in its own right. The Senate has passed it. I actually got the Senate to pass it last June, and the Assembly has yet to take it up. But we really are hoping that the Assembly will join us in that whole package, and particularly on that piece of legislation. Just a few other, we are on an ongoing basis dealing with very big problems in public housing with heat, in particular on some very cold weekends and some weekdays as well we've had lately. So, anyone who is dealing with that should call through the normal process and, call in the complaint, but also calling our office is a way, we are also dealing with NYCHA very directly on concerns building by building, in some case, even just individual lines of apartments. But we are monitoring that. And as I mentioned before, a larger infusion of capital and expense money is also necessary if we're going to address that longer term. And I've been working on that for a long time and committed to it. Another quick local thing, Governor's Island is now, has been added as a New York City ferry service stop on a routine basis. One of those routes goes from Corlear's Hook. And I'm very pleased with this. Governor's Island is in CB1 and I represent it. And I actually put some discretionary money in the budget to increase ferry service this summer. But now Governor's Island is open all year round for the first time ever. So it is really an opportunity to get out. It's wonderful and a lot more accessible now than it has been previously. Councilmember Marte and some of our new and Congressmember Velasquez and I wrote to the city's Office of Environmental Remediation regarding the voluntary cleanup that is going on at 265 South Street. We want to make sure that there's adequate opportunity to comment, for public comment on that and make sure residents understand what's going on. And I know the I think the Land Use Committee has had the OER present here, but we look forward to hearing more about your recommendations on that topic. And again, I know you have a long meeting. I will stop there. If people have questions, that's great. And if you don't, and want to move on to the next speaker, that's fine with me too. But thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Senator. There are 2 questions for you. These are the only 2 questions I will take. Mr. Richard Ropiak and then Trevor Holland. Richard, go ahead.
Hi, Richard. You're muted, Richard.
Good evening, Senator. I understand that you were instrumental in passing some legislation that was affecting the operation of housing developments like Mitchell Lamas. Problem is that communication did not reach them. So they're having difficulties trying to figure out how to implement these changes that are going to be occurring. Can I suggest that you or your office reach out to the developments to ask them what the issues are and how you and the state can assist them in implementing these changes?
Yeah, I thank you for the question. Yeah, we did pass a piece of legislation in last year's session that made various changes to the governance of Mitchell Lama co-ops. We also we agreed to a chapter amendment to that bill. Sorry, that's a bit of legislative speak. Basically, an amendment that is supposed to go into effect at the same time as the original bill that will be passed, I believe, shortly in the legislature and signed by the governor that actually modify some of those changes. We did get quite a bit of input on that legislation and had lots of conversations, but certainly did not reach everybody interested in how Mitchell Lama co-ops are working. We also had an ongoing conversation with HPD and HCR, which are involved in kind of on an ongoing basis in touch with all the co-ops. But I'd be happy to come talk with your fellow residents or anybody else. And I think it's a good point that we should probably make sure there's some systematic, we should be able to mail to or make sure HCR and HPD perhaps are mailing an update on what they're supposed to do to comply with that law. Generally speaking, it was intended to increase transparency and particularly focusing on instances where co-ops are attempting to privatize. It raises some of the thresholds necessary to do that. But it is a complicated piece of legislation, and I'll follow up with you and also take your suggestion that we get information systematically out to everybody who might be affected.
Thank you.
Pleasure.
Final questions from Trevor. Go ahead, Trevor.
Brian, and thank you for your advocacy on the 265 South Street project. Just a quick question on that. At the meeting, we heard from the development team that they wanted to get in a pile, just one pile in February in order to qualify for the 421A exemption, which is due to expire on June 15. Their thought process is if they get one pile in and they continue to work anytime after that, they would qualify for the exemption. So my question to you is, what is your thoughts on the governor's 485W, I think that's what it's called, new plan, and whether you think it should expire or be replaced by 485?
Oh, good question. I actually thought you were going to ask a more technical legal question about whether the start of construction for the purpose of 421 may trigger.
Trust me, I stuck that in there.
Okay, we are. Yeah, we're actually looking. We are aware that it's odd they're going to claim they've started construction for one purpose and not another, but that's probably a separate conversation and probably a legally complex conversation. On 421A, And it periodically we call it something new and say it's a new program and it's a different program. But basically for a very long time, the city of New York, on pursuant to state law, has foregone an enormous amount of tax revenue in exchange for what I view as an inadequate amount of public benefit in the form of affordability that is supposed to come in the buildings that get the benefit. I opposed the current version of 421A because I thought it was far too generous, again, relative to a very modest benefit. I think, you know, the governor's proposal, I think, is far from where we would need to be if we're going to do something new and better. We're going to actually enact something. So it does expire June 15th. I don't think there's any particular reason it needs to be. She's proposing as part of the budget, which would mean it would have to be resolved in the next 9 or 10 weeks or so by March 31st. You know, if there's a negotiation that leads to something where the public is getting good value for its money, I think the value, by the way, should come in the form of affordability, but also making sure that, you know, the jobs are good quality jobs that we usually expect with public investment. And also we should have more of a focus on sustainability, on energy efficiency and sustainability of these buildings if they're going to be publicly subsidized, as a means of trying to get to our goals around the Climate Leadership and Community Protection Act. So I don't think that this proposal is, you know, I would not support it as written, but it's early and the governor's proposed lots of things that some of which I think are great and some of which I think need to be substantially improved. This is certainly one I think would need to be substantially improved. I would also note all of the tax revenue that the public forgoes is city tax revenue. So I think it would be appropriate to give the city council and the new mayor an opportunity to weigh in on, you know, before we authorize as of right tax breaks in New York City. We might want to hear from the people who have to balance the city's budget. But yeah, it'll be an ongoing conversation, but I don't support it as written.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Senator, for joining us tonight. All right, so we're going to move on with the reports. I don't see any other elected officials on, so anybody who's representing any of the elected officials, please keep your report to 2 minutes. And we will start off with Congressmember Maloney's office, if they are on still.
Yes, it's Victor from Congresswoman Carolyn Maloney. Congresswoman Maloney introduced the Revitalizing Cities Through Parks Enhancement Act, which would establish a grant program to help nonprofit community groups establish small community gardens and parks. The grant program, which will help obtain leases for vacant municipally owned lots and provide funding for their transformations. Quote, COVID-19 pandemic has showed us more than ever that neighborhoods in New York City and many urban communities around the country are in dire need of safe, green community spaces where people can gather, said Congresswoman Maloney. Most cities don't have the resources to create these community parks, so it is our responsibility to step up to the challenge. We have the power to turn vacant lots into gardens and parks, which will beautify our neighborhoods, increase property value, and provide safe, clean areas for children to play. Open spaces and community parks are a critical part of urban infrastructure. My Revitalizing Cities Through Parks Enhancement Act has the power to do good for so many communities at home in New York and across the United States, said Congresswoman Maloney. These and other issues can be found at the Congresswoman's website. The Congresswoman wishes the members of the board and the community a safe and festive Valentine's Day. Thank you.
Any questions for Victor? Hearing and seeing none, thank you. Assembly Member News Office, 2 minutes.
Hi, everyone. This is Amy Vera, the Community Liaison from Assembly Member Yulee News Office. So on Martin Luther King Jr. holiday, the members of the Black, Puerto Rican, Hispanic, and Asian Legislative Caucus outlined the key priorities contained in the People's Budget. As we look toward the future and meeting the ambitious goals of the Climate Leadership and Community Protection Act, we must not just be carbon neutral, but carbon negative. We must prioritize investments in disadvantaged communities harmed by environmental racism as our state transitions away from fossil fuels. The 2022 legislative session is a critical opportunity to ensure that these urgently needed investments begin immediately. An annual investment in renewable energy, transportation, and infrastructure would create thousands of well-paid jobs across the state and allow for investments to flow through disadvantaged communities most harmed by the pollution-intensive fossil fuel company. I'm going to be including our CB report in the chat where you will find the caucus's outline of how we move forward with that initiative. And then as an update to the data desegregation legislation, it was signed into law. Assemblymember New thanks Governor Hochul for signing it into law, a landmark data desegregation law that allocates $13 million in state funding to better understand the diversity of needs within New York's Asian American communities. The AAPI data desegregation bill improves data collection among Asian American New Yorkers by creating 10 sub-ethnicity categories on government forms, allowing the state to better see and respond to the needs of AAPI residents. And then the rest of the CB report goes into more details to both of these things I've just mentioned, and I'll be including my contact information, and please feel free to reach out. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions for the Assembly Member's office? Seeing none, we'll move on. Assembly Member Glick's office, 2 minutes, please.
Hi, good evening. Charlie Anderson from Assemblymember Deborah Glick's office. I'll be brief this evening. Two things that I'll mention. I will, of course, include our board report in the chat, but also wanted to let folks know that the Assemblymember and her downtown council colleagues signed on to a letter this week urging the mayor and calling on the Department of Sanitation to reinstate pre-pandemic levels of street cleaning and waste basket service for Lower Manhattan communities. We have gotten an uptick in the number of complaints or individuals calling us, letting us know about issues of street cleaning and so on. So the Assembly member has been working with her colleagues to try and improve that. The second thing I will mention is that through the leadership from the governor's office, we were able to acquire a number of rapid COVID tests, which we've been dispersing to various community organizations. Within Community Board 3, we were able to give a box of tests to the Cooper Square Committee, and several others have gone out. As we get more, we'll try to be dispersing those as well and letting folks know that we're trying to get those out as quickly as we possibly can. I'll include my contact information in the board report in the chat. If there are any questions, that's it from me this evening.
Thank you, Charlie. Susan, go ahead. You have your hand up.
Thank you. So this is almost a rhetorical question. So yeah. I'm also, Community Board 3 is also getting tremendous amount of complaints about garbage, about rats that are caused by the garbage. My family was visiting me this weekend and was astounded to see a rat frozen in the ice. But one of the issues that we're dealing with is sanitation, like other agencies are right now dealing with about 50% staff. So how do we deal with this? I mean, how do we do the cleaning? And we clearly need to get more staff to the agencies, and I don't see the resolution.
That is a really good question, Susan. I think that, at least from the perspective of the electeds, when we wrote this letter, when we were calling on the mayor to try to work through those particular problems, which is to try to figure out how to get some of that back on track. I know that the MTA has been dealing with similar issues, and this week was able to restore, or maybe last week, pardon me, restored B-train service. So there are opportunities where these products and services, not products, but these community services come back online, which is a key reason that we were raising this attention to the mayor's office and to the Department of Sanitation, not to forget about the emptying of waste baskets on corners and also street cleaning. So if there are particular streets that are, especially in the East Village and Lower East Side and parts of our district, we're happy to work with you and the community board to try and continue to highlight those to the Department of Sanitation, which we've always done in the past as well. So perhaps you and I can speak.
Sanitation is very, very, very responsive. Whenever we say
Sure.
go here, they go here. But that's because they're taking people away from someplace else,
Yep.
and it doesn't resolve the problem. The problem is, you know,
Is the
and this is
staffing.
true of many agencies. So, you know, I feel in a sense like we're beating up on the agencies because absolutely we need these services. But the real issue is, how do you resolve the reason that we're not getting the services? And I don't know the answer.
Yeah, I don't think that anyone has a clear and concise answer that they can necessarily give, but it is certainly something that we'll continue to work through and think about as we proceed.
Thank you.
Thank you, Susan.
Thank you, Susan. Thank you, Charlie. Appreciate it.
Thanks.
All right. Assemblymember Epstein, is John still on?
I'm here. Hello, everyone. Good evening. Thank you, Paul. Thank you, Susan. Thank you to the whole board. Happy to be here. I will make this really quick. We are still doing PCR testing at our district office. So if you'd like to come get a PCR test, the lab has done a quick turnaround. If you come in the morning, you will probably get your results in the evening, which is what happened to me when I got tested yesterday. So please come do that. We are doing on Friday at 2 p.m. a home test giveaway. So you can stop by our office for that. The assembly member has many thoughts in the state of the state. I won't go through all of them, but it's in the board report and I will share that. As many of the other offices have stated, the outages in NYCHA developments, we've seen Jacob Reese, Lillingwald, Baruch Houses, LES 5, all have heat and hot water outages. I do want to give a special shout out to Laura Lugo, who's here, who's pushing for recovery meetings. And there's one coming up for Reese Houses, and we're going to be pushing for more recovery and resiliency construction meetings coming up, because a lot of this work has actually impacted the heating and hot water at these developments. The assembly member also has a total of 4 bills out of 9 bills that were just released that talks about improving employment opportunities for New Yorkers with disabilities. So I will drop that in the chat as well. And in the board report, we highlighted specifically Harvey's bills that talks about supporting people with disabilities. And then on a very local level, I just wanted to highlight that we're monitoring closely DOE's announcement of a potential merger between PS19 and EVCS and Children's Workshop. We've heard concerns from parents and guardians at PS19, and we're working with our colleagues, Assemblymember Glick, Councilmember Rivera, and Senator Hoyleman to address some of the concerns that we are hearing. So I will stop it there. Oh, wait, one thing I will say is as these budget hearings are happening, we're pushing hard for capital and operating fund investment in NYCHA and public housing. And I'll stop there.
Thank you, John. Olympia has a question for you. Go ahead, Olympia.
Thank you. So I'm a parent at EVCS, and yesterday we had a 3-hour hearing that maybe you were listening in. Thank you. I think what I want to bring up, because it's so important to be mentioned, DOE is letting us again down by not putting the appropriate resources for a process that is so complex like this to take place in a way that everybody in the community feels respected. And so anything you can do from your offices to put pressure, this is the merger between a school that is 71% qualifying for free lunch and a school that is among the wealthiest in the district. So if we don't put the right resources, this is going to be another failed, again, segregated school in a few years down. So anything your offices can do to push DOE to do the right thing, it will be greatly appreciated. Thank you. Thank you.
I thank you for that. We are definitely on top of it. And Assemblymember Glick and Epstein both met with the DOE along with the council member's office, and both of them expressed big concerns about this lack of communication with parents and guardians. And we want everyone's concerns to be addressed, because we've seen this before also potentially happen with PS 34. And a lot of concerns happened there. That stopped, and now we're looking at PS 19. So we're going to stay on top of it. We're going to have some meetings with some of the local parents and guardians at PS 19, and we will definitely keep you posted.
All right. Thank you, John. Appreciate you coming on tonight. All right. Senator Hoylman's office, 2 minutes, please.
Hi, I'm Caroline Wexelbaum. I'm from State Senator Brad Hoylman's office. Like everybody else, I will try to keep this brief. I just dropped our board report in the chat. I'm going to let everybody read it. The only thing I'm going to highlight, because a lot of people have already mentioned a number of things I was going to talk about, is many of you have heard about the New York State budget, and the executive budget just came out, which is the governor's proposal. In the next few months are considered budget season, where there's a lot of negotiating. But I know that a lot of people have asked me, they don't understand the process or how it works, or what is the difference between a regular budget and an executive budget. So there's a link in our board report to a little overview. It's really short, and I recommend everybody read it, because hopefully it will make these updates make a little bit more sense. Also in our report, we have Senator Hoylman has sponsored several new pieces of legislation, including a bill that will prevent state chartered banks from lending to slumlords. So I'll let you read about that. And if there are any questions, I'd be happy to take them.
Thank you, Caroline. Any questions for the senator's office? Hearing and seeing none. Thank you, Caroline, for coming out tonight. All right. Our last and certainly not least, Council Member Rivera's office.
Hello, good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for the opportunity to speak. Nice to see your faces. Happy New Year. I have a few very quick updates. The City Council announced new committee chair and membership placements last week, and Council Member Carlina Rivera is really proud and honored to be serving as chair of the Committee on Criminal Justice. She's also will be part of the committees on hospitals, COVID-19 recovery and resiliency, housing and buildings, land use, and she will also be joining the Committee on Standards and Ethics. So we're really excited to continue that work in those committees. In addition, I just want to echo what John Blasco said earlier. There have been really, really horrendous and systemic outages, water, heat, in NYCHA developments in our district. And so we're working closely with the other elected officials and TA presidents and others in the community to address them and to push for accountability from NYCHA. We also were really excited to have the legislation that Councilmember Rivera worked on to further rights for delivery workers in New York City become enacted last week or this past weekend. So now delivery workers have more rights in terms of their pay and their access to restrooms. And then last but not least, I know many people have increased test kit supplies, but our office also has quite a few test kits, rapid test kits. So if anyone is in need or would like to pick any up, you can get them at our district office on 254 East 4th Street. I think that's all from me, but I'm happy to take any questions.
Questions. I see Susan and then Olympia. Go ahead, Susan.
Isabel, could you very briefly describe some of the responses that your office has had to the 14th Street First Avenue issue, because the person who brought it up is still on. I was going to address it also.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much for speaking on that earlier and for flagging that, Susan. Our office is working and has been working really, really diligently on the many intersecting issues that are taking place on 14th and 1st. And I know it's impacted many residents and local businesses at the intersection, and particularly during COVID-19, to have so many people concentrated in that area, I know is concerning for public health. We're working with quite literally every agency possible, including, of course, the community board, but also the Department of Sanitation, the local precincts, Department of Homeless Services, Harm Reduction Services, DS. We've also brought the cleanup corps to the site, and we're also going to be working with the Immaculate Conception school community to brainstorm further solutions, particularly around the church's vendors in the back. And we also will be doing a joint meeting in the coming weeks with Community Board 6, so that all of our resources can be really refocused on working with this new mayoral administration. Because I know there has been a lot of work that's been done, but I know that the conditions of concern have continued. So really happy that you brought that up. I'll put my information in the chat, and more than happy to speak further on that at another time as well.
Thank you. Thank you, Susan. Olympia, sorry, go ahead.
Thank you. So I have two questions actually that are completely unrelated. One is, I heard that there was a foreclosure to Charas. So if you heard anything, it means anything for us. And then the second thing, it's not just for you, all the local electeds. I've been in touch with all of you because of the reopening of the schools and how problematic it was during the surge of the Omicron. So I asked your office, and I don't know if you got an answer. Another tragedy that people allege has happened is that for the first time in the history of our city, we had 3 deaths of children from COVID in 1 week, last week. And no one has covered it. So I asked for your office to find out if it is true. Because I understand everybody wants the city to restart, but, there are some things that we should be careful about. And unfortunately, the reopening has been very haphazard, let's put it lightly.
Yes. Thank you so much, Olympia. I was just speaking with Katie yesterday, I think, about the reports of these deaths, which are obviously deeply disturbing. I know we've been in touch with the Department of Health to get further information. So once we hear back from them, I'll be sure to follow up. And then regarding Charas, I had so many updates, but I wanted to be respectful of my 2 minutes. But yes, there is news about Charas. There is movement on the foreclosure, and we're working really closely with SOC 64 and other electeds offices on connecting with, again, the new administration and the new mayor on exploring all of the options so that we can, of course, continue to fight to keep the building in our community. But I think, and again, I don't want to jinx it, especially late on a Tuesday night, but I think there's some positive developments there, yes.
Thank you. Thank you, Isabel. Appreciate you trying to be succinct. All right. That's the end of our elected official reports. That didn't take long at all. All right. So let's move on to our attendance and approval of the minutes of November 2021. Laura, it's all yours.
Good evening, good evening. David Adams.
Yes.
Yaren Altman.
Yes.
Jesse Beck. Jesse Beck. Leeberman.
Yes.
Carlin Chan.
Yes.
Jonathan Chu. Jonathan Chu. David Crane.
Here.
Eric Diaz.
Here.
Alistair Economakis.
Yes, thank you.
Jamie Felber. Jamie Felber. Shirley Fennessy. Shirley Fennessy. Ryan Gilliam.
Yes.
Deborah Glass.
Yes.
Andrea Gordillo,
Yes.
Caniel Hernandez,
Here.
Herman Hewitt,
Here.
Trevor Holland,
Present.
Linda Jones,
Yes.
Valentina Jones,
Here.
Tatiana Hurio. I shouldn't be
Not on the board anymore. She
Yeah,
shouldn't be on the
I
list.
shouldn't be there. Lisa Kaplan,
Here.
Olympia Kasi,
Here.
Jeanette Kim,
Yes. Here.
Michelle Cooper Smith,
Yes.
Mei Lee,
Yes.
Wendy Lee,
Yes.
Alicia Lewis Coleman,
Yes.
David Louis,
Yes.
Lori Lugo, that's me, Ellen Lu, Evan Luo, Michael Marino,
Present.
Alexandra Militano, Alexandra Militano, Matthew Perlis,
Yes.
Tariq Ramos,
Yes.
Paul Rango,
Yes.
Damaris Reyes,
Laura, I'm sorry, it's Alicia.
yes,
Shirley Fennessy said that she's in the attendees. Somebody needs to move her over.
thank you, Alicia. Susan, thank you. Damaris Reyes, Richard Ropiak,
Yes.
Laura, I already said yes before.
I didn't hear you, so you gotta sing it next time.
Okay, it's okay. I just said my name again.
Got it.
Thank you.
Tomas Rosa, Robin Chattel,
This is for the, yes. Yes.
Heidi Schmidt,
Yes.
Larissa Schamberg,
Yes.
Anisha Stevens, Anisha Stevens, Sandra Strother, Sandra Strother,
She's on leave.
Danielle Tanel,
Yes.
Josephine Velez,
Yes.
Troy Velez,
Yes.
Rodney Washington, Rodney Washington, Kathleen Webster,
Yes.
Jackie Wong,
Yes.
Ricky Wong.
Yes.
Muchas gracias.
And Laura, that was a yes for Thomas Rosa. I didn't realize I was muted.
I saw it. It's good.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, I don't see Shirley on the attendee list.
I think she's on as the 212 number. She's on as a phone call and it's difficult to promote a 212 number.
Yeah, I don't see, I'm not able to make her a panelist.
You should be able to at least allow her to speak if you want.
If that's 212-673-6690, that's David Adams.
Yes. So thank you, Michael. I changed her to allow her to speak.
Laura, can you call her name out? That would be Shirley Fennessy.
Shirley Fennessy.
She seems to be muted.
I think she needs to push *9 from a phone in order to speak.
I thought that was David Adams.
Yes, no, it's me.
Star
Yes,
six.
Shirley.
Shirley,
Yes,
Star
I did.
six.
thank you.
Did you
All
hear me?
right. Yeah, we got it. Thank you.
Okay, great. Thank you. Sorry.
All right. Laura, we're done, right? Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, good evening, everyone. It's only 8:49 and I'm up to the board chair's report. I'm going to make my board chair report very, very quick. Yes, I am going to be working on these elected official reports and their length going forward. Hopefully I'll have a plan in place by next month for our next full board meeting. That does take a lot of time. I know we had newly elected officials on tonight, so I want to be respectful them and start off on the right foot, I guess, for lack of a better phrase. Going forward, I am looking at the efficacy of committees. I mentioned that last month, and different committees, and maybe switching things up at some point, not without the blessing and the approval of the full board. Hopefully that will be in my thoughts soon. In terms of communications, if you are communicating on any different issues going on within the community that affects this board, please loop us in so that way we can assist and know what's going on, and there's no information coming from third parties or anything like that. So I just want that to be clear. I don't have anything else for my report tonight because I do want to move forward with some of the resolutions that are on the table for tonight. So that is it for my report. I'll take any questions. One final thing, the email I am going to use going forward is cb3chair@cb.nyc.gov. So any board related communications, you can feel free to email me at that email address. I know a lot of you have my personal email, and that's perfectly fine. If you just need to shoot me a quick question, yes, I will put it in the chat. Olympia, give me a second. And we will go from there. If you have any questions for me, I'm more than happy to take it. If not, you can always shoot me an email and I'll respond. And if not, then I will pass it along to Susan for the district manager's report.
Okay, thank you. First, I want to remind all the members that you should be getting emails with a link for this meeting that will have you join as a panelist. You get an email a week before the meeting, a day before the meeting, and an hour. So if you use that link instead of the website, you won't have any problems. I also want Carlin put in the chat link to New York Speaks, NYC Speaks, which is a survey from the mayor. I am also going to send that out to all the board members tomorrow. And I urge people to respond to that to get our viewpoints in. I am hoping with the new administration that we will have better enforcement with the agencies. It has been very frustrating, increasingly so over the last 8 years. So we need a month or two now to see if we can affect a change. This goes along also with the 14th Street and First Avenue. For one thing, the resident reported that the police wouldn't do anything. That's because the city, or maybe the city council, took that illegal vending away from the police department, put it in consumer affairs. Consumer affairs is giving violations again and again and again and again. I asked if any of them are being paid. They haven't gotten back to me yet. So I am hoping that that this gets better. We're working with Carlina's office and to set up a meeting with interagencies and the other elected officials regarding Tompkins Square Park, various things, the cleanups, lack of services to people that need them there, and all the issues that we can cover. And there's a lot of people had been suffering from a lot of the amplified sound from open restaurants. The city has finally made clear, I think the second or third round, that amplified sound is not allowed in the open restaurants. However, that information has not gone out to either the police or the businesses. So we have now worked with the police who do have the information, and particularly in the East Village, they're starting by putting out notices, and in both 7 and 9, they're visiting the businesses as a first step. So I'm hoping by the time it gets warmer, that we'll be able to deal with that problem. And I think that's it, unless anyone has any questions.
We have 3 questions. It's going to start with Lisa Kaplan. Go right ahead, Lisa.
Thanks, this is quick. Susan, you mentioned briefly in the electeds report that there's such a thing as a map that shows where all of the shelters and supportive facilities are. Is that on our website now, or could you post it?
It's not public information because of confidentiality for the residents of the facilities. I can tell you, I can give you some idea of it. I did send it to all the elected officials and we're working on various kinds of facilities, but we have 11 shelters and 2 safe havens. 8 are above Houston, 5 are below Houston in various areas.
So you're saying confidentiality would prohibit you from sending it to a board member?
I would have to ask. I took it from a list
on
that
that?
said, I took it from a list from DHS that says do not distribute. So I will ask about that.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Lisa. Carlin Chen and then Olympia Kazi. Carlin.
Yeah, hi, Susan. Any update on the open meeting law?
Yes, it's extended. It's extended till the end of the emergency. They did not put an end date on it. So in other words, I'm sorry if I was using a shortcut. So we can still have virtual meetings for the extension of the state declared emergency.
All right, another couple of years, thanks.
Olympia, go ahead.
I just wanted to say about the New York Speaks that everybody should know it expires in 2 days. That means actually in 1 day, I think. So we only have 1 day to take it. And I want to let everybody know that it's very, like it's long. It's going to take you a few minutes. It's not a quick survey, but it's worth it. And I'm wondering, it is a transition team, but most people heard about it like literally like in the last 2-3 days. So I'm wondering whether as CB3, we should consider whatever, like sending them a note and say, just keep it open a few more.
I'm happy to try and do that.
Yeah, because it's a good survey. Like anyone who has some time, you should do it.
Yeah, it suddenly appeared in my inbox and now it's like appeared 15 times, but you're right, very little time. I will try.
All right. Thank you, Olympia. Susan, I presume that's the end of your report, correct?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, thank you. All right, so we're going to move on to the committee reports right now, and I'm going to start with the executive committee. And yeah, I was going to bring this up for Carlin on the open meetings law, but Susan already answered. Yes, we'll be on Zoom for the foreseeable future. So Hollywood Squares it is. Okay, next in exec, we did have one resolution. There was some legislation that was passed at the end of December. You should have seen it in your vote sheet. It was in reference to a new SLA law and temporary licenses. I'm actually going to queue up Michelle on this one. Michelle, can you just explain that briefly, please?
Sure. Thanks, Paul. So the state is now allowing New York City liquor license applicants to have temporary licenses. This is something that's been in effect in New York State, but has not been something in New York City until the past month. So going forward, all applications that come to us will just be asking for both a temporary license and a permanent license. And so that's no problem. That'll be new licenses. What this resolution addresses is licenses that we have already considered, but have not gotten their permanent licenses since the CB heard them. For those of you who don't know, there's a huge delay at the state level. So we might hear a license, 4 or 5 months before they get their permanent license. So there's a tranche of applicants we've heard in, the past 6 months, whatever, who are now coming back to us asking for permission for temporary licenses. So what this resolution says basically is that CB3, having already carefully considered these applications and the fact that they're exactly the same, we do not change our position on them. So for any of them that we have approved with stipulations, we don't object to giving that temporary license, based with the stipulations that the state will put on it for the temporary license, which are standard and you might see are very similar to CB3s for their temporary license. We can give a nod and a wink for our district manager for helping with that. Then the more important part is that we are still asking for the SLA to deny temporary licenses for any licenses that we have denied. And if that is the case, we will go to the hearing where the licensee is coming up, where they might be able to get their temporary license, and state all the reasons why we, sought to deny them. So essentially, this resolution just says our position that we already offered as a board does not change, regardless of the fact that it's a temporary license. Happy to answer any questions about it.
Any questions? Rezo, it's relatively short. It's in your vote sheet.
I have something, Washington here.
Go ahead, Robin.
I didn't miss the attendant because my phone went dead, but I was there. I missed the attendant on when you was calling.
Laura Markin present.
Thank you.
Thank you, Rodney. Any questions for Michelle on this? No? Hearing none? Okay, thank you. All right, thank you, Michelle. Moving forward, land use, Jackie Wang, go right ahead, sir.
Thank you, Paul. So the land use had a wrestle this month on 265 South Street cleanup. To give you some backgrounds, 265 South Street is one of those huge towers planned in the Two Bridges area to build. This one is to build 1,300 units. So the site was a gas station, so they need to clean up the site first. They have hired a consulting firm to do the cleanup, and their work will be monitored by the Mayor's Office of Environmental Remediation. Community Board 3 received a notice to comment on their work plan around Christmas time, and they gave us 30 days to comment. And Susan got the city extend the comment period to February 9th. So our comments on the plan are that we want the developers to follow the restrictive declarations they have entered when they were going through the zoning approval. These restrictive declarations require them to form a community construction task force and also hire an independent monitor. We also put in the wrestle that we want to see more impact mitigation, such as air monitoring, traffic management, and etc. Most importantly, as Senator Kavanaugh mentioned before, we asked the developer to give us to give the community sufficient time to comment. We don't want them just to rush the project because they need to meet any past incentive or other funding deadlines. And that's all I have.
Any questions for Jackie? No questions for Jackie. All right.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jackie. David Cranon.
Yes, I am.
Hi, David. Can you give the transportation report? Just for full transparency, David was acting chair for the month of January. We went blast for them past for that one. So thank you, David, for doing so. And can you just give a quick report on transportation this month?
Yeah, we heard after a hiatus because of COVID, we heard from DOT about what they might propose for Clinton and Grand congestion. This is a long-standing issue, and it's been a long series of meetings. It was very interesting, and we'll be considering a concrete proposal of theirs at the next month's meeting, which is roughly, rather than traffic that comes on Grand to get to the bridge would not turn left on Clinton. Instead, they would go another couple blocks, and I'm sorry, would not be turning right on Clinton, and they would be going another couple blocks and turning right on Norfolk. We'll be talking about that next month.
Thank you, David. Robin Chattel, you have a quick question for Mr. Crane?
I just want to say, I can't wait for that to happen. I live on the block. Thank you. And I want to come to the meeting.
Is there a question there?
All right.
Just exciting,
no...
exciting news.
All right. Thank you. Thank you, David. Appreciate you chairing last month. Economic development did not meet. Parks, Trevor, go ahead.
Thank you. I'll keep this short. Obviously, construction has commenced on the ESCR project. They are doing what they can to meet that 5-year deadline. So you will see weekend and overnight construction, including the removal and replacement of the Delancey Street Bridge. which is a significant advancement in this particular project. Actually, a new portion is already open. I don't know who would really want to use it, but the passive lawn near Pier 42 is now open for community use. Next month, we're going to see a discussion about the southern portion of the Coastal Resiliency Project, AKA BMCR, or Brooklyn Montgomery Coastal Resiliency Project, and a new acronym. So we'll have something else to remember called the SPCR, which is the Seaport Coastal Resiliency Project, which is a new project that extends, that's actually in the Seaport area, but it's going to be connected to two other projects which are in CB3. So we'll hear an update on that next month. Thank you. Any questions?
Olympia has her hand up. Go ahead, Olympia.
Thank you. So Trevor, I know like 2 months ago, we had discussed organizing a town hall at CB3 about ESCR. And today, I think Wendy in the public session mentioned it. And they also, mentioned this issue of air quality impact, immediate impact by, the elimination of all those trees. Do you have any updates on the town hall and also what are they doing in terms of monitoring the air quality?
Well, we had a long discussion about that at the meeting. I mean, I don't want to go into detail about every particular thing, but there are 2 monitors they're bringing in 4, but we're asking for more air quality monitors. With regards to the town hall, I mean, myself, I've been to a number of meetings. I don't know how effective it would be to rediscuss the design and bring in the designers and talk about community engagement and new plans at this point. But I hear the concern that people have about the project overall, and that even though we spend close to 8 to 10 hours every month on the meeting, that may not be enough for people to express themselves, because they do go to CB6, which I attend, they come to CB3, and there's a community advisory group along with another meeting, all talking about this large project. The concept of a town hall is interesting. I don't know who would be leading that. That's probably a city responsibility. But if they were to lead that responsibility, I think as a community board, we'd like to join, but it's a heavy task. And anyone who's been involved with this for the last decade has been to dozens of meetings. So it's interesting, but I think the city or EDC needs to undertake that.
I mean, just to clarify, I just feel that at CB3, we should be asking for this to take place because a lot of people are interested, and the town hall is a format where they get to say what they need to say, and we invite the electeds and everybody, And also it's, again, some education because there is a lot of misinformation taking place around this project.
Agreed. Wow.
Yeah, I think one of the things that we have said to them at the meetings is that they need to talk to the people who live next to the waterfront, Baruch, Lillian Wall, Jacob Reese, and the other ones. And so I think that is also very important, that they hear from the people who are actually most affected. And so I think that we have advocated for that at our meetings, and we can ask them again about that. I think that I know for myself, I've asked for that more so than a town hall. Talk to the folks that are most affected.
Is there anything else for Trevor? One
I
last
didn't really
question.
want this to turn into a committee meeting, but it appears that's where we're headed.
I'll take one last question. Go ahead, Kay, and then that's it.
I would tend to agree with Trevor that a town hall would be a really good idea. I think Trevor has tried, as has the entire committee, to get answers. I think the last suggestion was to have a particular somebody from the city, the mayor's office, take charge of answering questions that if we haven't gotten those answers, I don't know what power persuades, but a lot of what we do is listen. And we do have a new council member who's in charge of the Parks Committee. I think that might be a good pressure point for the community. But I think it would be a good thing to revisit in the Parks Committee. Do we want to have just a chance for people to listen, to be listened to? But again, if you read all our resolutions, which are many, I think that that would be a good start. But you know, the new council member and chair is Shekhar Krishman, and he seems really good. He wrote an op-ed for Gotham Gazette, worth reading.
Okay, thank you, Kay. Thank you, Trevor. All right, we're gonna move forward. I'm gonna go a little bit out of order. I'm gonna go with SLA right now. Michelle, go ahead.
I'm sorry, hey. Paul, I had my hand up. Sorry, can I say something?
Quickly.
I just wanted to, you know, in these board meetings, I wanted to make sure we're not leaving anyone out in any of our, as we're representing the entire community. And there are other people, there are lots of people who live along the river that are not mentioned. I'm going to make sure when we're talking about reaching out to those people who live along the river, that we're talking about all the buildings and communities along the river. That's something we as a community board should be aware of. Thank you.
Copy, thank you. All right, Michelle, go ahead, SLA.
Thanks, Paul. The committee considered 3 applications this month. We approved 2 and we denied 1, and then 1 withdrew at the meeting because they didn't have the proper materials. If anyone has any questions, let me know.
Any questions for Michelle for SLA? Carlin, go ahead.
Yes, hi, Michelle. The SLA number 4, Xing Yang, whatever, noodles, 53 Bayard. I thought that committee it was approved for wine beer.
Yeah.
Yeah, the vote sheet here has OP.
Okay.
Unless stipulation signed.
Okay, thanks for flagging. Yeah, so let's just do a friendly amendment with if there are no objections to the first. Laura, are you taking minutes?
Yes, she is.
Okay. Laura, I'll send you the edits, but it should say, whereas Zoos Group, Inc., DBA Yinsheng Rice Noodle House is seeking a wine beer license.
What number is that?
Number 4, SLA number 4.
Thank you.
Any objections
Thanks for
to that
flagging,
amendment?
Carlin.
Any objections to that amendment? Hearing none. That's good. Michelle, just send that over to Laura and she'll put it in. I think she just stepped away really quick. Go ahead, Olympia.
So for SLA 5, I'm wondering, like, you know how we're very careful on not putting names, etc. In the I don't know, 4th whereas, where you say that the LES dweller also organized 57 residents to submit individual form letters. Like, we very often have organizations coordinate residents turnout and we don't name them. You know what I mean? Like, if it is what is it called, EVCC or GVSHP, like we don't say it. So I mean, unless you think there is a reason to put it like that, you can just say 57 residents submitted letter.
Well, it's because they all came through as a form letter.
I mean, I don't know. It's just, I think in the past, like, we don't say it like in a ULURP if somebody's organized by a tenant association or something like that. I mean, I don't know. It attracted my attention. And if you feel that we need to keep it, we can keep it, but we can discuss it for the future for coherence, you know.
Okay, thanks.
All right, any other questions for Michelle? Daniel, I believe you had a comment or no?
Thanks, Paul. I just wanted to thank the SLA committee all the time and the whole board. For the first time in 17 years, we finally got a liquor license out of the basement of 112 Rivington Street, and now it just opened up as a great neighborhood shoe store. And you should all come check it out. And I'm happy that also this month, the committee voted to deny a similar bad space for a liquor license on in agenda item 5. But thanks, everyone.
All right, thank you, Daniel. All right. Thank you, Michelle. All right. Last, certainly not least, Human Services. Go ahead, man.
Hi, good evening, everyone. So tonight we have the Human Services Committee has one thing for you to vote on. It's on the third page, I think in the middle of your vote sheet. The topic of this reso is a safe haven that has been planned for 91 East Broadway. The provider is called Care for the Homeless. And before I get into the details of it, explaining to you, explaining the reso, I wanted to acknowledge that George Nashak is here with us. He is the president and CEO of Care for the Homeless. So George, could you just say hi and maybe wave your hand at us?
Hello, May. May and Susan, thank you for inviting me to the meeting. It's a pleasure to be here this evening.
Okay, so George will be, as I explain what we're voting on, if board members have any questions on the substance of it, George will, we can refer it to George and we'll see if he can answer it. Okay, so so this is, so the reso is about the safe haven. And it is, we received a presentation about it back in November. Department of Homeless Services notified CB3 that a safe haven is being planned for that location. I just wanted, so the document, the thing that we're voting on is to acknowledge and appreciate the services that are being proposed there. It is for the street homeless. And I just wanted to remind people that in our district needs, actually it's this, we have a description of why this particular facility is needed because of, this growing street homeless population. And then also in our budget priorities, it is out of our 25 budget priorities, it is like the 7th one. Safe havens, the funding pot for safe havens from the city. We asked for increased funding, and that is sort of our backhand way of saying, we want more in our community. Otherwise, we wouldn't talk about it. But also, I just wanted to clarify, we are not approving a location or a specific program. You might be used to doing that with, say, liquor licenses and ULURPs and all that, but we are not approving anything. We are just expressing acknowledgement and appreciation for what we've been told. So I also, so this committee, the Human Services Committee actually has passed resos to endorse specific programs at specific locations, and this board has passed it, but this is not it. So an example of where we have endorsed a specific program is when usually they are seeking funding. Maybe they want to start a new program, maybe they want to expand it, or change it up, or and so they need funding, and usually they need letters of endorsement to supplement their application. So that's what they asked us for. They come to the meeting, they talk about it. If we vote for it, approve it, and the board approves it, there, they got their letter and they, attach it to their application as a supplement. So an example of that, just to remind you, our most recent example was from last summer when we passed the reso to endorse bio buses. The bio bus, they wanted to set up this was a science lab at the school on the courtyard, the school on East 11th Street. And they were still, it hadn't started, they still needed money. And so that's what they came. So that's an example. So just to clarify what this is, so that, does anyone have questions?
Any questions for me, Jackie Wang?
Hi, May, thank you. And thank you, Paul. So my question is that I understand the Safe Haven program has always been on the district need statement. But I'm just wondering, when they presented a project, they released the contract itself. I mean, the contract cost taxpayers like $337 million money. So I just feel like we should have a chance to review that document. And also, I mean, most of the project that goes through a land use committee have hundreds of pages for us to read. We don't know what is in this contract and of this project. So are there any way I can download a copy of the contract?
I don't even know what contract you're talking about, but I really don't know what you're talking about. I don't know if George has anything
So maybe
to say
George
about
can,
it.
yeah.
I'm not sure, Mr. Wang, what contract you're talking about.
The budget.
What budget?
So according to DHS, the budget for this project is 370 mil. And we wonder like what is inside this budget? Like how much money is allocated to construction, how much money is allocated to rent, how much money is allocated to service, that kind of thing.
One of the things that may be confusing about this project is this is a debt service deal. So this is a project in which we are proposing to purchase the building. And so what sounds like an enormous amount of money is actually quite a normal amount of money when you amortize it out over the 30 years or so. I mean, we're still, I don't want to get into too many details because we haven't nailed down every detail yet, but the reason that it sounds like a lot of money is that it's a 30-year deal. And so you've got to amortize that cost out over 30 years.
So just a question, are you buying the building or there is a hotel investor buying the building first and then sell it to you or lease to you?
My intention, and again, this is still very much, we brought this project to the community board quite early in its development because we feel it's important to have dialogue with communities before we get too far down the road, but we're still very much in the negotiation stage. It is my proposal to DHS that Care for the Homeless will buy this building. Okay. I mean, you said you have been talking with community board for a long time, but I just wanted to say we are only aware of it back in November. And I understand there are presenters in the meeting saying that many Chinatown stakeholders and business owners supported the plan, but I just wanted to let you know, like most of the local business or residents were not notified at all. And I guess that's the reason that the city is planning a public engagement meeting with all the elected officers, including CB3. Yeah, and there are other people who have hands, we fully intend to participate in that meeting, and we look forward to it. We very much want to have dialogue with the community, and I think when people hear about what the intentions of this program is and how well-resourced this program is, I think we'll develop significant support for it. It really is targeted to reducing the street homeless problem in Chinatown. I listened carefully to Mr. Cheng's comments earlier in the meeting during the public comment period, and we very much want to address the issues that he identified in his comments. Thank you.
Yeah, and I just wanted to clarify that the community board doesn't, I mean, every project has a budget, right? Otherwise they wouldn't be a project. But we don't have a role in like deciding their budget or approving it. I mean, somebody else does that. So, I mean, if you want to ask questions about it, George is, he can answer to best of his capability, but it doesn't come into consideration in terms of, and we're not even approving it. We don't even get to approve it. We're just, hearing it. And there needs to be community engagement. So, and as you said, there's going to be a meeting. These facilities typically have a cab. And so the engagement will be ongoing for years, even after it's established. The other, facilities that, that we are a member of a cab on, it's not just a one-shot deal, these engagement things. So I just wanted the other board. So so I just want to get back to this letter, the letter that we're doing. Those are the things that you should be thinking about.
Okay, thank you, Jackie. Leeberman next.
Hi, May. So you said that you're not asking, well, this isn't a vote to approve it or to deny it. So what's the purpose of this letter of appreciation? How is it going to be used? Who's it going to be presented to, and for what purpose?
It's going to be mailed to George, who's right here with us. The mail to his organization. He's the CEO. He's the head of the organization, and it's to I guess because there's been a lot of I guess there's always controversy and about these types of things, and we wanted to be transparent to the board members that we, just because, they came to this one meeting, but that's not the end of the dialogue. And, it's not due to open until 2023. And, so we want to keep up this dialogue with them about, we've acknowledged this is what we've heard, and it documents what we've heard. Besides the videotape and all that, it documents on the paper. It says, dear CFH, you came to this meeting. This is what you told us, and that's it. And we can, our committee can consider that to, invite them to other meetings for further updates as, as they move along with the project.
I'm a little confused about, is his organization now able to present this to DHS and say, look,
no, they don't need to present it. It's just for us to communicate with them. They don't need us to approve of anything. They don't need our letter of endorsement.
Okay.
That's not what it is. It's just for, because we have an interest in these kind of things, this board in particular and in our area in particular. So we want to keep that going. And I think it's, be given these kinds of facilities, sometimes these things are not so routine. And the committee does want to be transparent to the board about what exactly we're doing.
Sure.
And if I may add, I feel strongly that our organization wants to be in a collaborative position with the community board. We want to listen to concerns and address those in our plan to make certain that we are creating a program here that becomes an amenity in this community and helps you address a significant issue and doesn't become a problem.
Of course, I just wonder, May, if this isn't premature before the outreach that is expected to be done to the rest of the community, which
it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. The outreach will be done. The outreach can be done multiple times and later. And like I said, if any of you know about these cabs, there's outreach all the time, and there are issues that come up all the time. And it's a continuing thing. So it's actually a good time to do it.
Thank you for making that point. I do want to, let me emphasize that we will establish a community advisory board. The community board 3 members are welcome to join, or interested parties are welcome to join. We would anticipate probably meeting as frequently as monthly at the beginning of the launch of this project. Our experience has been that once it becomes a little bit more normalized, those meetings become slightly less frequent, but we'll commit to meet as frequently as necessary and to continue to do outreach, even if we're open. And we want this to not have an impact on the community that you perceive as negative. And so we want that feedback to make certain that we can improve it.
Okay. Thank you, Lee. I appreciate that. It is 9:30. I want to be sensible of time. I see Kathleen, then I see Lisa, then I see Susan, in that order. Go ahead. Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you, May. I really appreciate your presentation, and I really am glad that Mr. Nashek, that you're here. I just want to say that in the park that I try to think about with the community that surrounds it, we have young men who are sleeping outside tonight, and they sleep outside. They're good people. And the minute they get any kind of foothold, life gets to turn around, because if you don't have a place to sleep and think about yourself and shelter and safety, not much else happens. So I also know that this was in part, or I assume it was in part, because of the murders of, in particular, Mr. Kwok, but other homeless folks, and I can't tell you, the number of deaths that go on just from the elements. So I am really appreciative of the board putting this forward. I understand concerns. The park I'm in has a lot of struggles. A lot of our homeless people help us. They are some of the most diligent workers and people who clean up that we have, including the guys who sleep outside. So I do want to say that humans are redeemable, and I don't pretend about people who are dangerous, and I think that Mr. Nashek, that's going to be part of what I'm sure you will want to engage in, is how do I reassure people that we will be having a lot of resources here for folks. The one question, there are two things. One is that I think that map that Susan referred to becomes important because we all understand that every neighborhood has to contribute to the problem of homelessness. I mean, we saw what happened when people were pushed out of the hotels, that for the first time they had individual spaces. People started to turn their lives around, and that mattered. And then they got kicked out, and the consequences of that. So the map is important. You know, no community should be forced to have more than their fair share. I can think of a lot of communities, and a lot of communities don't have the wherewithal or power to push back very well, but the map is important. And the other thing is because a lot of what the guys tell me that I talk to, because I frequently have long conversations and friendships with the guys who are in the park, is that having an individual space where you can have a little privacy matters enormously. And that's why so I'm wondering, and you may not know this now, but I think it's crucial that there be the opportunity to have some kind of privacy in the shelter, the safe haven, I should say, that you're building. But absolutely, we want people off the streets so they can turn their lives around. So, and we all get to do our fair share. And I get the concerns because this is the dynamic in the park that I work on. And Susan and the board have been great getting us resources for people to come in and help. We need resources. That's exactly what we need. Thank you.
Okay. Final two comments, Lisa and then Susan. Go ahead, Lisa.
Okay. I have to say, I got really confused about that presentation because by May, because I read the last paragraph and it sounds like we're supporting this, and I have no compunctions about supporting it, except I'd like to hear a little bit more about the plans for security, because, you know, clearly in this time and with recent events, especially as they affect Asian Americans, this, you know, has to be a very real concern. So I would like to hear more, but I don't see how we can write the final paragraph here that says, therefore be it resolved that CB3 acknowledges the Care for the Homeless will be providing a service that will directly benefit homeless embedded in our community, focusing on unsheltered people. Care for the Homeless will therefore contribute important benefits, and then say it's not a letter of support? Well, that makes no sense to me. So I guess maybe a way to get clarity is, are you making a commitment that this letter will not be distributed further than within your own organization, or Mr. Nasak, or I'm sorry if I mispronounced your name, or it is not going to the Department of Homeless Services?
Well, they're here actually, so they're all here.
No, yeah, I mean, how could you say it's not a letter of support? It is, and I'm for it, but you can't write that and say we're not supporting it. We are.
I'm sorry.
I could actually speak to that.
And please
Go ahead,
also
Susan.
answer that. My only reservation is security, so I'd like an answer to that as well.
Susan, go ahead, answer.
Yeah.
You can answer.
So the reason it's the program itself, not whether it's, and I would.
How can you say that? It refers to a building, an address?
If I could just finish. I don't know if everybody was aware on the board that within the last year, DHS came to us with a safe haven program on Orchard Street. And, you know, although we want safe havens we ask for safe havens in our district need, we thought the program was horrible. We thought the provider was horrible. And we had no role in saying you can't do this, but we pushed back terribly. regarding both the provider and the programming not being offered. And I think a lot of this is saying, this is the kind of program that we want, as well as memorializing what they've promised to us. And it's not a question, do we want a safe haven, do we not? What we're saying is, you have given us, offered us, the other one fell through for technical reasons, regarding the sale of the property. But I think an important issue is to say, these are the kinds of programmings we want. These are not the kind of programmings we want, if that's at all helpful.
I don't think that addresses the question. This letter says we support this program in that building.
Well, it's given to us. We don't get to choose the building, you know.
So why are you saying it's not a letter of support? That's the part I don't understand.
Would it make?
Maybe.
Well, it does align with our position, from the budget priorities.
It's a letter of
So-
support for this program in this building.
No, so, okay, so for, for human services, I guess, okay, it's not a letter of approval, put it that way. We don't get to approve nothing, okay? So just.
Okay, but it's a letter of support.
So people
Okay.
can't tell us to reverse our approval and somehow things will change. This is not like land use where, we don't, land use, I mean, everything is advisory, I understand, but it's not like approval as in SLA or land use. Do you understand that, Lisa?
Yes,
That I
but
think you understand, right?
I just don't want this, we can't sugarcoat this. We're supporting this project. And I'd also like to understand a little bit more about the security.
Can I, is it appropriate for me to just give a couple of details on that?
I'd really appreciate it.
We have been doing this work for a very long time. We've put a very professional security plan together. First of all, we'll have about 80 CCTV cameras throughout the building, and very importantly on the outside of the building, to make certain that we're also taking responsibility for what goes on in the sidewalk and the area in front of the building. We will have a security team that will consist of 4 security guards, full-time security guards, on each of 3 shifts in the course of the day. So there are 3 shifts in 24 hours. There'll be 4 security guards on each of those shifts, in addition to a shift supervisor who will oversee the work of those security guards. And on top of that, we'll have a director of security who will oversee the entire security program in the building. That's a person who works full-time, but is also on call for any kind of emergencies that happen. We intend to provide a landline, a phone that a human being will answer in the building by our staff, should there be an issue that a neighbor or a community member wants to raise with us in an urgent way. I mean, if it's something that's more, that requires more thought and discussion, we will have other forums in which to have those conversations. But we want to take very seriously our responsibilities to protect our residents and also to protect the community.
Thank you. That sounds very responsible. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Lisa. Jeanette, Kim, go ahead.
Can I move to amend the letter ever so slightly, because I understand that it's not meant to be an explicit letter of support, but it needs to acknowledge that the presentation was made. So I am pinging in the chat now what I suggest we say, and the change is in caps. It says, therefore be it resolved that Community Board 3 acknowledges that care for the homeless aims to provide. I believe it neutralizes the statement while still acknowledging all of the things that George has come forward to the committee for. And that way, that's really just acknowledging what the purpose of the presentation was, right? It was to give CB3 the information. I don't know if that's opening a can of worms. I don't want to open a can of worms. So if that's not in order, I'm happy to just take it back. But if anyone else wants a second.
Is there a second for that amendment? Second for that amendment at all? Lee, did you raise your hand as a second?
I did, yes.
Okay, there's a second. Does anybody object to this amendment of the resolved clause? Okay,
happens if you
questions?
have?
Could somebody read how that would, how that last therefore would
I'll read it,
then?
Lisa. Therefore, be it resolved that Community Board 3 acknowledges that Care for the Homeless aims to provide a program of services that will directly benefit homeless, bedded, et cetera, et cetera. The only change is saying instead of is providing benefits, it's aims to provide, which means we acknowledge that that's their mission and doesn't really say whether or not we're into the mission or against the mission in either set.
Well, let's see.
And then it'll also say the Care for the Homeless Safe Haven will therefore contribute important benefits to CB3.
Then I would also, maybe I can amend my little motion and say the Care for the will therefore aim to contribute important benefits.
You want to put new language in the chat so,
Yeah,
so
hold on.
Laura and May can have it?
Thomas, Paul, I think I have a process question that I want to ask.
Sure, Damaris.
I guess I'm very confused right now about why we're putting this amendment forward when I'm not really certain that we've gotten to the root of the issue. I mean, I agree with Lisa that I don't think that it's a problem, but I'm trying to understand why we're sort of averse to calling this what it is, and if there is a reason for that. That is to me the real issue here. I don't understand why, whether or not that was the intention. If we are giving them a letter of support, let's give it to them. That's it.
Yeah,
I mean,
okay.
is it that we have to vote on it and that's what we're avoiding? I don't understand why we're avoiding calling it that. I just can't get around that.
Me either.
Okay, would it, okay, just in terms of like style and formatting, would it make it better if it were an actual letter that said?
Why does that matter?
Written in the format of a letter, so it's not a reso, a style of a letter?
Nobody's asking whether it's a reso necessarily. I'm asking, why is it that you are averse to calling it a letter of support? I don't understand.
Okay, okay, I'm not averse to calling it a letter of support.
that's all.
I just
I'm
wanted
just
to make
trying
it
to
clear
get-
that it's not an approval. Okay, let's put it that way.
Yeah, I think we're clear. We all know that. We know
Okay,
that
okay,
it's-
if you all know that, that's fine. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you, Damaris, but if everybody truly understands that, then it could be okay.
All right.
It could be.
Thank you.
I think so. You know, that's what you guys are saying.
Yeah, I mean,
I'm fine with it without the amendment.
Okay, I gotta address the amendment at some point before I ask the questions because it's still on the floor. So
Let me see.
we have,
What's the matter?
we have the motion, the amendment. David, I'm sorry, I know you just walked away. Do I didn't do roll call vote on this amendment? Or no, we'll just see if it was just an objection. He walked away from me. All right. You pushed him away.
I think you're right. It's it asks for no objection.
Is there, if there's no objections, David, if you just, as a parliamentarian, I just need your guidance on this one. Do I call for a roll call vote on this amendment on that resolve clause? Or do I just ask if there's no objections to this amendment?
No, I would ask that, but if there's an objection, you should really just proceed to a vote. You can try to see if there's unanimous consent by asking, and assuming that there's a single objection, just go to roll call vote. It'll be
I
fast.
object.
All right, so we're gonna go to roll call vote. Laura, I'm gonna need you to, on this.
So
Yeah,
I had my hand up. I mean,
Okay.
one thing is, just to clarify, I think that in the process of the debate of the what do we call this thing that Jeanette did, the motion of her motion, I think Damaris and Lisa suggested that, no, we actually just want to clearly support. So maybe Jeanette wants to pull back her motion, and that's her right, before we have to go through a roll call, since there is the counter proposal from Damaris and Lisa.
I think it's already objected, so I don't think the motion continues at all. So
You can pull it. If you want to just pull it, you can pull it.
It
There-
seems like no one's interested, so I'll just withdraw. Sorry, didn't.
That's
want-
fine. Motion's withdrawn.
Well,
Go ahead, David.
technically it belongs to the body, so if there's a single objection to withdrawing it, it cannot be done.
Is there an objection to the withdrawal? Sorry, it's 9:30, it's 9:45. Okay, there is no objection to the withdrawal, so it's withdrawn. So I will take the final 4 questions. I'm not taking anything more after this. Olympia, Wendy, Linda, Robin, in that order. Go ahead, Olympia.
Thank you. So, I mean, one thing that was, first of all, to clarify, I think we should support, but when Susan Stetcher mentioned the Orchard Street proposal, I don't remember the resolution, or maybe it never came in a resolution level. So if we really like the services that are suggested for this location, it would almost make sense to state clearly in the whereas what it is that we like. I don't even know, for instance, like if there are a specific number of beds or something like that. And then just because I'm dealing right now with this, we have increased homelessness. Like right now, the data show 1 in 10 kids in public school are homeless. So if like this population increased during COVID, so like if this is the place in which we say what kind of services we want to make sure we prioritize, I would definitely say, you know, children homelessness should be prioritized so that, you know, and I agree with everybody, every neighborhood should have their share, but also if we have families that have kids in the schools in this area and we send them in shelters elsewhere, it's just nuts. We should not be doing that. And so this is the kind of amendment that I would do in a res of support.
Nothing to do with children.
Okay, so they don't offer homeless services to
This is a program only for street homeless adults.
only for street homeless. Okay, that's what I wanted to clarify because it wasn't clear to me when I read it. Thank you.
All right, Wendy, go ahead.
So it's just really quick. I definitely think that we do need these services. They're very like important to the health of the community in general. I'm just not that happy with like the location. I'm not sure if that can be like changed or anything, like edited or anything like that. Because I do work near Fulton and William Street, like in like the Seaport and like City Hall area. There is like a homeless shelter there. And then I've seen homeless adults kind of crowd around storefronts, like there's a Dunkin' Donuts, and they kind of stand there right by the door. When you walk up to them, they open a door for you and they kind of expect something for doing that. And that's like one of the really big security concerns because there are going to be similar situations at East Broadway than with like our huge population of seniors, senior Asians. It's just not a good idea, I think.
Okay, well, as I said, we don't pick the location. We can't say, oh, we like this, but we want another, you know, it doesn't kind of go like that. But I don't know if you heard about the security plan. We also have to be careful sometimes, you know, about like, you know, we see people like opening the door for you. And I mean, I don't know. I mean, I think I know, Wendy, what you're talking about, but sometimes we just have to be careful about, well, who are those people exactly? Are they homeless? Are they not? Where they come from? You know, I mean, not everyone who does that is homeless and not every homeless person does that. So, you know, sometimes we just have to, it's good to, you know, sort of investigate more.
Thank you, Mayor. All right, thank you, Wendy. Linda and then Robin, that's it.
Okay. Yeah, I'll be brief. I live in this neighborhood, of course, and I'm fully supportive of safe havens. I think it's wonderful. I supported the idea of such a thing on Orchard Street. However, I just am worried that the community is so upset about this, so we have to deal with that before we support anything. The people who work and live really close to that shelter site need to be heard. That's it.
Well, they
okay. All right. Thank you, Linda. Robin.
Yeah, first of all, I was raising my hand, Paul, to object to the resolution being withdrawn. So that's what my hand was up for. But I'm confused now. If you
The resolution is not the whole resolution.
No, that last change. about saying aim to. I didn't want it withdrawn. That's why I raised my hand.
A little late for that.
What was that,
Well,
David?
he didn't.
He did call that it was done, so the vote was.
My hand was up and I couldn't get my volume on or whatever. My hand was up, so I wasn't wanting to ask a question.
Sorry, Robin, next time I'll do better. I'm gonna keep it off for this time. Thank you, though.
And so I also am concerned about what today in this, I don't know what's happened, mainly if, you had objections from community members at your meeting, but the only people we heard from today are people who are objecting to this. So again, I think that we all want, people who are homeless to have places to live, obviously. But if there's such, we all talked about, I thought there was some talk about more community input, which doesn't seem to
there's, as Jackie mentioned, there's going to be a meeting, for community members, including all those who object and are totally against it and probably don't want to see it at all ever in Chinatown or anywhere nearby. But they will be, anybody, whether you support it or object to it or don't want it in your neighbor, you will be able to attend that meeting, and there can be more meetings too, more where their questions and any such questions are focused upon. So it can all happen at the same time. So if we're saying that we need this in our neighborhood and we support it, the purpose, this is not like land use where you have to collect all the, what we did with some other things where we collect all the stuff and we throw it into this one document. We don't have to do that, and we need to establish an ongoing, kind of communication with the service provider. And this is what we are doing with this letter.
All right, thanks for clarifying.
All right. It's 9:51. I got to be respectful of everybody's time. I got 3 final hands, and that's it. That is absolutely it. Susan, Michelle, Jackie, that is it.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to raise my hand.
Okay, great. Down to 2. Michelle.
Thanks, Paul. I've sat here listening all night about people talking about people who just happen to be homeless as if they are a problem. These are people that live in our community, and maybe they can't make it to the Zoom meeting because they don't have a computer, because they don't have a home. And I'm disgusted by the way I've heard people talk about people just because they happen to not have homes. I think what Kay said is right. Giving people stability means that they can move forward in their lives, and without that, they cannot. And every community needs to do their fair share. Every moment that we spend debating this is a moment that someone will not have a home. We are all in our homes right now, and I feel really, really disgusted by how we're sitting here in judgment of people just because they happen not to have homes, not by any fault of their own, but because this is the most expensive city to live in because of meetings like this, where people come and say no to everything. I think that we should do better. We're supposed to be representing our community and the whole of New York, and everyone deserves a home. Thank you.
Sorry. Jackie, you're the last comment.
Thank you, Paul. May I just want to say that right now the city is planning 3 shelters in Chinatown. It's not just this particular one, and many community members are actually okay with the other 2, but this one has a particular concern. That's why they're asking the city to do a community engagement. I understand that the conversation can be ongoing, but I also feel like it is premature to take a position right now because of all other concerns. I mean, it's not like the community is against all the shelters. They are planning 3 at the same time. They are just have concern about this particular one. That's all I want to add. Thank you.
Thank you, Jackie. Robin, you're the absolute last. I keep saying
that. We'll be here
Go
till midnight.
I think it's been clear that everyone here wants people without homes to have a home. I don't think anyone here is judging anyone. And I think we need to be careful about how we speak about each other at these meetings. I think what's happening is people are concerned that the shelter is in this location and that the community who we've heard from, and that's who we've heard from, are doing it. And I think, as Jackie's saying, it's premature for us to to approve it. That's all. So
Okay.
I just want to put that out there.
All right, thank you. No, thank you. I'm sorry. I am closing the debate on this one. And thank you, May. I know this is not easy to do this item at 9:30 to 10 or whatever amount of time it went. So thank you. And we're going to go to our vote now. We're going to go to our closing vote, and everyone knows what to do. So, Laura, go ahead.
David Adams.
Hold it. Can I see the amendment, SLA 4 on the Xinjiang? It was about the language supposed to be updated. Can we see that?
Michelle, can you just put that in the chat really quick when you get a chance? The SLA 4.
The only amendment was to change it from on-premises liquor to wine beer. It was a mistake of mine. That's the only amendment. I don't know what needs to be posted in the chat.
So it's been updated to wine beer.
Yes.
Yes, the word liquor was taken out and it was replaced with beer and wine.
Okay.
Laura, go ahead.
Continue. David Adams.
Yeah, Paul, you're supposed to call the question. You want to close debate, but that's besides the point. Yes, accept. Yes, all right.
Yolyn Altman.
Yes.
Jesse Beck. Leeberman.
Can you come back to me, please?
Yes. Carlin Chan.
Yes.
Jonathan Chu. David Crane.
Yes.
Eric Diaz.
Yes.
Alice Stoikonomakis.
Yes.
Jamie Felber. Shirley Fennessy.
Yes, no on Health and Human Services number 4.
Ryan Gilliam.
Yes.
Deborah Glass.
Yes.
Andrea Gordillo.
Yes.
Camille Hernandez.
Yes.
Herman Hewitt.
Yes.
Trevor Holland. Did I lose him? Trevor Holland. Se me fue. Linda Jones.
Yes, but no on Health and Human Services number 4.
Valentina Jones.
Yes.
Sorry, my microphone battery died.
Está bien.
Yes. Sorry.
No worries. Thanks for coming back. Lisa Kaplan.
Yes.
Olympia Kasi.
Yes.
Jeanette Kim.
Yes to everything except Health and Senior Human Services, just yes with reservation.
Michelle Cooper Smith.
Yes.
Mei Lee.
Sorry, yes.
Wendy Lee.
Yes.
Alicia Lewis Coleman.
Yes.
Alicia, okay, thank you. David Louis.
Yes, but no on Health and Human Services.
What number? What number? You got to call out the number. Thank you.
Laura Lugo, yes. Ellen Luo. Michael Marino. I lose him. Michael Marino. Se me fue. Michael Perlis.
Yes.
Tariq Ramos.
Yes.
Paul Rangel.
Yes.
Damaris Reyes.
Yes.
Richard Ropiak.
Yes.
Tomas Rosa.
Yes.
Robin Shatzel.
Yes, except abstain on Health and Human Services number 4.
Heidi Schmidt.
Yes.
Larissa Schamberg.
Yes.
Danielle Tanao,
Yes.
Josephine Velez,
Yes.
Troy Velez,
Yes.
Rodney Washington,
Yes.
Kathleen Webster,
Yes.
Jackie Wang,
Yes, and no to Mr. All and no to social service number 4.
Ricky Wang,
Yes.
Mr. Leeberman,
Aye, yes, except abstain on Health and Human Services number 4.
abstain?
Abstain on the Health and Human Services 4.
Thank you.
Got everyone, Laura?
Can I
Yes,
just
sir.
add no to Health and Human Services number 4? Sorry.
Now, Wendy?
Yes.
That's Wendy
please, I'm
Lee.
sorry.
She can switch it back.
Yes, and no to, gotcha.
All right, everyone. This is the part that I like. It's called adjournment. Have a good night, everyone. Hopefully we'll do these in a shorter period of time. Have a good night, everyone. We're
Thank you,
adjourned.
Thank you for your time this evening.
Thank
We
you.
appreciate it.
Wait a minute, did that pass?
I believe so. Yes. There was only 3 no's and 2 abstentions.
Oh, okay, all right,
Thank
thanks.
you, everybody. Good night, Paul.
Good night.
Thank you. Good night.
Okay, good night, thank you, everyone.
Good night.
Night.
Hey, Paul, for Robert's rules, I think when Janet voted with the reserve